Hello, everybody. Welcome to the very first episode of this currently unnamed podcast with me, Kreams, and my co-host, Broken Ronin. Why don't you introduce yourself a little bit more, because you can do that better than I can.
Yo, what's up? Here on the podcast, first episode, like Cream said. And honestly, we're just going to be talking about a lot of stuff, anime, manga, obviously, and just general stuff outside of that. So I think it's going to be pretty interesting. And I hope you guys enjoy as we go down this rabbit hole of discussions.
Hell yes, dude. And I'm very excited because the very first thing that we're going to do is we're going to talk about this week's Jujutsu Kaisen chapters. Okay, I'll just jump into it, dude. I think that Sukuna is going to come out soon, because when I first saw that panel at the very end where Yuji admits that he's guilty, my first thought was automatically, so this is it. We haven't seen Sukuna in like 30, 40 chapters. He's definitely coming back. What do you think?
I disagree.
Why?
I think that this is going to be a bigger moment for Higiruma than it is going to be for Sukuna in this situation. Based on like the last panel, I feel like Higiruma noticed that Yuji's expression was almost too pure, innocent, almost like a little sad to be as straightforward as he's making it seem. And considering the fact that Yuji before showed traits of dishonesty, but with this, a much bigger and more prominent crime, he's showing such blatant honesty with him, right? I think Higuruma is going to somehow either deactivate the domain expansion and interrupt the trial, or he's going to just stop the technique from activating completely. However, the intricacies of that are going to work specifically, I don't know. However, I do think basically what's going to happen is that Higuruma is going to question Yuji, or maybe go further into it. I don't think that's is gonna come out. I just don't think that's the most likely thing. Personally, I feel like the next time we're going to see Sukuna enter is going to be when he says "in chain," or when he uses his like code phrase and takes over Yuji's body forcefully. Because I don't think there's also a narrative reason as to why. You could argue there's a narrative. No, you can't actually. Yeah.
Okay, so here's...
It's impossible for Sukuna to take over now, right? I don't think it would make sense.
Okay, so here's my reasoning. So like my internal logic, I don't disagree with you, but my internal logic goes like this. Those crimes are technically Sukuna's, and I don't know if Jujutsu, like the power system, like cursed energy, considers them to be two separate beings or the same being. Because if you take a look at it from like a holistic standpoint, based on everything we've seen so far, it's safe to assume that cursed energy sees them both as the same person, right? Because otherwise the culling games wouldn't have automatically enrolled Yuji as like a player.
Exactly.
However, when it comes to like direct action like that, Yuji Itadori is the one on trial, and
Sure.
Those were Sukuna's crimes because Yuji was more or less incapacitated, right? Because he was force-fed all those Sukuna fingers. So that was Sukuna, like 100%, right? And
problem though. Here's the problem I see, right? So, Judgment, I think, is the name of the Shikigami. Maybe it's not Judgment, it's something similar to that. It says Itadori Yuji is accused under suspicion of committing mass murder in Shibuya, right? Then Yuji admits that he did it, and then he's like Judgment or the Shikigami basically says he's guilty, right? So the thing is, it's not that we don't know whether or not Sukuna or Yuji are considered different entities. We already know Judgment, like we already know how it considers them, or how it kind of like classifies them. It classifies them as the same entity, at least here, because we already know that it counted Yuji guilty, right? We already know the verdict. Okay, I think that.
So wait, if we know the verdict, doesn't that kind of put to bed any kind of notion that Higuruma can just end the trial? Because the trial's over, right? Like, he can't stop the Shikigami from doing whatever actions it needs to take, right? I assume it's some kind of like ritual that can't be stopped once it's started, or, like it needs to run its course, basically.
I'm not sure, because we haven't had. Higuruma so far has had no reason or motivation to stop his domain expansion from activating its ability, right? Because, okay, clearly we can eliminate some things. Clearly, the death penalty is not going to affect Yuji, at least not in a conventional manner. Yuji's not going to die and stay dead, right? I don't think that this is going to happen.
Especially because Sukuna, like the implication from the Yuta fight seems to be that Sukuna can more or less just heal him at that point, despite, him not wanting to. So, can you assume that Sukuna can take direct action in terms of keeping Yuji alive that doesn't tread on their binding vow, or does so in a way that kind of implies that this is like a not a symbiotic relationship per se, because it seems like neither of them necessarily want to be with each other. So I wonder if Sukuna being able to heal his heart is more or less for the sake of executing his plan with Megumi or whatever, or if it's just, hey, he has, 15 out of 20 fingers of my power, so it's now officially reached the point where I can't let him die for my own survival.
Yeah, it's possible. The only thing is, okay, so to answer your first question, it's like, can Sukuna like directly affect Yuji's like physiology? We know for a fact he can, or at least it's speculated within the series that he can, right? Chapter 138. It's right after Shibuya. Choso asks Yuji how his injuries are, right? And Yuji is like, I'm good right after getting hit with the black flash, right? And he's like, I think it's because of Sukuna, right? So we bet Yuji almost confirms himself, or at least it's speculated within the series that Sukuna can heal Yuji, and in fact does do it, whether passively or non-passively, right? We do know that it's at least like out there that that's a possibility. However, here's my thing: there is no logical reason that Sukuna should be able to come out now, right? Let's look at it. Let's rather than look at it like should he? Why would he be able to now? There's no reason. Like every time before, it's been Yuji switched into him, right? Without like with no drawback before, or Yuji was like beaten to a pulp and fed so many fingers that it overrided. I don't know, however, overrided his ability to handle them initially, right? But here, none of those things are the case. So how would Sukuna even come out, even if that's what he wanted right now? I don't think there's any way established in the series.
So, with the exception of the in chain binding vow, which, to be honest with you, Sukuna can heal Yuji's wounds. And now that I think about it, he can heal Yuji's wounds whether he likes it or not, because in chain only covers Sukuna's actions in terms of preventing killing or maiming, but it doesn't prevent things like healing or... So my running theory, for example, with how Sukuna will use Enchained, which I'm patenting right now. Anybody listening, this was my idea first, okay? I will copy strike you if you make a video about it. This is my idea. So the idea goes like this, right? It's going to be one of those like Mexican standoff situations where no party can move, but it's basically going to be a net loss for Yuji if he backs down. It's like going to be, I don't know, let's say Megumi is like held hostage, or I don't know, they threaten to like resurrect Nobara or something. And essentially there's going to be like a time limit to this thing, and what's going to end up happening is that Sukuna will then use that moment to just, that last 30 seconds that Yuji needs to make a decision, he'll just say the words and he'll just prevent Yuji from interfering, right? He'll just be like, okay, time's up, brat. And then that'll be the end of it.
I thought something similar too.
Yeah.
I think I feel like I posted on Twitter that like rather than necessarily do something, I think it's kind of been like Yuji's character arc, and he's been portrayed to lack agency in everything he does, right? Lack a choice. So I feel like the pinnacle of that is in a moment he needs it most, Sukuna takes that choice away from him, right? And rather than harming them directly, he won't hurt them or maim them, right? What he'll do is prevent Yuji from stopping that or something like that. But I don't think that's here. I don't think that's going to happen now. I think Sukuna's moment is going to be, as weird as it sounds, bigger and more impactful than this, right? I feel like Judgment can be stopped if the domain expansion is deactivated.
So do you think that for his level, just for fun, let's assume Sukuna's the one on trial, right? There's no amount of like power that Higiruma possesses that can enforce any judgment, right? No matter how harsh, on Sukuna. And I think that's like a pretty fair assessment, right? Like he just lacks the sufficient ability to enforce any of his like will, power, whatever on Sukuna. Because at the end of the day, all a domain expansion is just, more or less a test of strength. Because it's your
that only applies to current domains, right? Past domains, like the domains Higiruma has, aren't the case because, for example, we know, like, we can infer, right, if Yuji without cursed energy is like relative to Higiruma in terms of like speed and strength and durability, right? Because Higiruma obviously has the advantage of cursed energy, and he's like a grade 1 sorcerer in strength or whatever. Right, Yuji without cursed energy is able to fight against Higiruma. Higuruma's not able to like one-shot him or anything. They're pretty relative, right? We know that Yuji with cursed energy should be a fair bit stronger. However, his domain expansion is potent enough to completely stop violence from happening, right? He's saying it forbids it. We also know, like, this. I feel like, let's see, I want to go back to. Yeah, okay. So the way not Kenjaku, Tengen like mentions old domains is like that like domains of before force targets inside to obey the curse technique's rule, right?
Right.
So if Higuruma's rule is that if you're proven guilty, right, then you face the consequence, then it wouldn't matter how strong Sukuna is if the domain itself inherently forces him to follow those rules. It'd be like
But that
it'd
doesn't
be like for
like.
example Gojo versus Mahito in a domain expansion. If Idol Transfiguration was activated, even though Gojo is demonstrably stronger, a domain expansion clash, if Mahito were to somehow win, Mahito would kill Gojo.
But that's not the canonical rules for a domain expansion clash. Like the rules are whoever has the more refined domain wins, and nobody has a more refined domain than Sukuna, right? So all he has to do to get out of Higuruma's like rule is just to use Malevolent Shrine, cancel it out, and then that's the end of it. Like there's no like, do you count that as a violent act? Like, can he not just like do the domain in the first place? Is that what you're saying?
That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, right, if we're assuming that, like, we're putting it in this hypothetical where we're, like, assuming Sukuna is the one who's gotten hit with, like, the death penalty instead of Yuji, right? If
Yeah.
this has happened, the rule has already occurred, so Sukuna could deactivate the domain, but the effect should still take place, right? It'd be like, let me use an inverse example, right? Mahito opened and closed his domain in 0.2 seconds, right? He used Idle Transfiguration on Toto in those 0.2 seconds and then deactivated his domain, right? Toto's hand only blew up after the domain was fully closed, so we know domain expansion rules can exist even after the domain itself is closed, right? We know this because Toto puts up his own simple domain, covers everything up to his hand, has to cut it off, and it explodes after Mahito has already closed the domain again, right? So we know that like domain expansions, at least as a general rule, don't have to like can apply even after they're closed once the rule or once their technique is already in place.
So going back a second, let's assume that sure, the raw violence of curse techniques, and especially Sukuna's, which are basically all like for killing, let's be real.
Yeah.
Let's say those are all taken out of the equation. What you're left with is like Sukuna in Yuji's body, and there's two cases about because Higuruma said the initial condition for his domain is, or for the punishment after the domain finds you guilty, is that it removes your cursed technique. But for Yuji, because he doesn't have a cursed technique, it removes his cursed energy. So with Sukuna, the outcome would be no cursed energy, no cursed technique, but he'd still have his cursed energy. And we know for a fact that, based off of like Megumi's estimation, that Three Finger Sukuna, just physically speaking, was about as fast as Puppet Toji.
There's a problem I think you're forgetting here.
Wait,
let
me just finish.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So reasonably, we can assume that based off of the power scaling we did earlier with Yuji and Higuruma, like with and without cursed energy, respectively, we know that if it was Sukuna, no matter what Higuruma did after he passed judgment, he still has to physically fight the other person. He's just given it the advantage in that the other person loses their cursed technique, which a lot of sorcerers just rely on way more than their raw cursed energy output, which, fair game. It's a cursed technique. It's fun. But with Sukuna, like, fighting him physically at, like, 3 fingers would be a problem. Yeah. But fighting him at 15 fingers of, like, cursed energy amount would just be suicide for Higuruma, right? So the reason I want to circle this back to why this panel made me think of Sukuna coming out would be, I don't see Yuji winning this thing because he was found guilty. That's pretty much the end of it, right? So reasonably we can assume that because he was found guilty, whatever judgment is passed on, which I believe it was like the death penalty, like assuming it's like, yeah. So based off my reading of it, it reads as like an insta-kill, and just to be like super conservative with that theory, it's still theory, it's like Yuji's heart stops or something like that. Right? And what do you know, like Sukuna's like boom boom and then Yuji's back, or worse off, now that Yuji's considered dead, they're like pact or whatever is kind of null and void. Sukuna takes over again, and then Higiruma dies anyway.
Actually, so I want to handle a couple of points, right? So the first problem is I think your premise is a bit faulty, right? The foundation of the argument is under the assumption Sukuna still has cursed energy or can use it, right? The problem is Higiruma basically says pretty outright when sorcerers are unable to use their cursed technique, their basic control over cursed energy becomes a mess, right? The reason is because like they're here. Let me go to the officials because I was just looking at scans right now. Let me go over to let me see. Let me grab my phone. Like Manga Plus puts it in a pretty interesting way.
Yeah, but
I mean,
like again, like let's assume it was just a disruption, right? I don't think that Sukuna is weak enough for that to like. I'll put it to you this way: no matter what level of disruption occurs, if Higiruma gets even like one of Sukuna's attacks to land on him, it's gonna be like getting hit. It's gonna be like getting hit by with a Kotsu, right? Like any one of his blows could be decisive, right? Because he has just so much cursed energy.
Here's the problem: we don't know. Like the thing is, right? We know that Higuruma's confident that like he basically can take out anybody once their cursed energy's gone, and rightfully so, right? This is the basis of almost like everybody not named Yuji, Maki, or Toji, right? That's the basis of why they're so strong, right?
Yeah.
However, the problem is disrupting the curse technique, Higuruma says, disrupts their ability to manipulate cursed energy. And how he puts it is because it goes against their their ingrained instincts of manipulating it to use techniques, right?
Okay.
So if we're saying that this rule applies, Sukuna can't use cursed energy either.
Oh, okay. I want to my next argument will be based off this premise. Do you think Sukuna is able to understand and use cursed energy with the same level of degree, precision, and knowledge as Gojo?
You could argue better if you wanted to, but I think probably relative.
But so he's no slouch, right? And Gojo has the biological advantage of having the 6 eyes.
Sure.
So where that comes into for me is essentially the 6 eyes allows you to read, perceive, and like essentially comprehend cursed energy in this insanely detailed level, right? It's a biological advantage in every way. But Gojo is a biological advantage in and of himself. But Sukuna has pretty much the same, I could argue, the same level of attuneness to cursed energy, just with a different methodology. So I don't think it's reasonable to say that like a distortion in like an average sorcerer would work the same way with either of those two, because their understanding of cursed energy is like vastly superior to Higuruma's. And I don't
That's
think
the thing. I think that honestly works against him. So like let's look at the way, because Higuruma says it's not just like they can't use cursed energy. The problem is it goes against their instinctual nature of how to use it, right? So the reason is because it nullifies their ability to manipulate cursed energy in a way to use techniques, right? Obviously, it doesn't inherently mean they can't use it to amplify themselves. However, the problem is Higuruma says basically that muscle memory, if we want to put it like that, you've acquired doesn't work, right? It simply like all that knowledge, because Sukuna, as far as we know, his knowledge comes from just being that guy for like 1,000 years or whatever, right? he's had a lot of time to refine his techniques, learn about cursed energy. However, if all of that, if 1,000 years of ingrained muscle memory, of ingrained knowledge, of all this stuff is just turned off, or even worse, reversed or some way, right? We know it would honestly be worse the more experienced the sorcerer is, right? That's the way I look at it. Like imagine if you've been walking for however long, right? 18, 20 years, whatever, right? Now imagine if instead of your legs working the way your muscles have been thinking for the longest time, every time you blink, you move your leg in a different way, right? It would mess you up because it goes against everything your body and mind have built that connection to, right? Even though you've been, and it honestly affects someone like a toddler.
You got disconnected.
Did I cut out on?
You cut out on toddler.
Okay, so basically, right, we're talking about muscle memory. I feel like someone who barely just learned how to walk, right, would be affected less by, like, let's say their nervous system and the way they walk being completely rewired than someone who's been walking for 20 years, right? The reason is because the muscle memory and the connection acquired is so much stronger that anything different from that would completely throw off your senses. If we assume it's something similar, like your natural muscle memory with manipulating cursed energy is just thrown out of whack, people like Sukuna who have been doing this for so long, in my opinion, because we don't know the intricacies of how the technique works and whatever, it would be thrown off even worse than like a regular sorcerer because of how much finesse he has with his current way of manipulating it, right? But and obviously there's that. Like I think if it's not, like unable to be manipulated, Sukuna is just some regular dude, right? He's not like I don't think he's like portrayed to be like Yuji and have that. Maybe if we say he has that like innate physical strength that Yuji has since he's in his body, but I don't know if that's how that works.
Well, it's kind of implied that, well, my personal like headcanon, and I think that's where the story's headed, just based off of what I've seen so far in Jujutsu Kaisen. Like I think we're all collectively waiting for the moment that Yuji whips out one of Sukuna's techniques, you know, either by accident or intentionally, because like we're all kind of working under the assumption that that's the end game for him. And I am of the mind that it'll work in reverse too. It's just that Yuji doesn't have as much to offer as Sukuna does. So, like, I think being in his body is a very reasonable thing for him.
Sure. Even if that is the case, Higiruma still had like a distinct advantage. It wasn't like a wide gap, but Yuji is clearly on the back foot here, right? He's running away. He's being crushed underneath Higuruma's hammer, right? So I will say he's probably like Sukuna would still most likely lose that fight. In all honesty,
that is an objectively scalding take, man. I'm gonna be real with you. That's like a
because I feel like if it's Sukuna without cursed energy, or at least without like proper cursed energy manipulation, we don't know what that looks like because it happened on a weird case, right?
Huh. Was that a pun?
Oh, wait, what'd I say?
Weird case.
Could have been a pun. Oh, okay, whatever. Anyways, that was not intentional. If you found that funny, I'm glad, but if you didn't, that was not on purpose. In any case, basically, if it's a weird, since this is a weird situation, we don't know how it works normally for like experienced people. Like if it was Megumi and he just couldn't use cursed energy at all because he couldn't use his curse technique, I think we'd have a little bit more of a precedent considering how genius he's portrayed to be. But it's a lot of speculation, and with that speculation, even if we give him the benefit of the doubt and say he's as strong as like Yuji naturally, Higuruma still wins the fight because he's beating this Yuji. Obviously this is a nerfed Sukuna, but he would beat him if that's the case. I, however, going back to like the beginning, don't think Sukuna is coming out now. I think it's being honestly, I genuinely think Sukuna is being built up to the point where we almost like narratively forget about him, or at least not forget about like his existence, but we forget his prominence, and then just when we least expect it, he just tears shit up.
Yeah, but like that I just wanted to explain my personal like, because if I just say, oh yeah, this panel just made me think, oh yeah, Sukuna's coming out anytime, it just sounds like an absolutely insane take, because like there's almost no indication based off of the reading material that that's the conclusion you're meant to draw. So I just wanted to like explain that real quick. However, I want to circle back to your opinion on that. What was your takeaway?
So from just this chapter and like what I think is gonna happen next.
Yeah.
Okay. So Higuruma's expression seems a little like everything before. He's been so like Higuruma's been extremely dead faced or like clearly like either unhinged or just super serious, right? Or like that makes me think he's going to do something unexpected, considering that chapter, like a couple chapters back, where we see like how he wants to keep his eyes open to everything, and he wants to like make sure, he wants to like, you know, he obviously he's dealt with like these like criminal court cases, whatever, blah blah blah, right? I think he's going to see Yuji and maybe not outright like think he's good, but need to question further in some way, shape, or form, right? I trust that I trust Akutami is going to handle this character interaction well, because for me, this chapter, I didn't get to talk about this quality very much. This was the best chapter, I think, in the series thus far. Not thus far, but like since chapter 132. I'll say this is the best one since the IMU chapter, I think.
Dog, I don't know if it was that good.
It was, for me, it was really, 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 really good. Like, the only one that I think you could argue are better, in my opinion, is like Maki versus Naoya, or like the Maki's like some of the chapters in the Maki Zenin clan arc or whatever.
I don't.
Besides that,
I mean, my
the
personal
fight was amazing, and I think the character moment for Yuji was really dope.
for what it's worth, like my favorite chapter was the in all of the heavens and earth I alone am the honored one chapter.
Oh, I'm not saying overall, right? That's a bit more contentious. What I'm saying is since chapter 132, or like the tail, I don't know where I cut out, but I'll just re-say real quick. Basically, I don't think this chapter is the best one, period. But I think it's the best one since chapter 132. I just think in that span, this is the best chapter he's put out.
I wouldn't go that far, but I will say it was a damn good chapter.
Yeah.
So anyway,
really good.
What was your theory about where the rest of the story is going from there?
I just think Higiruma is gonna somehow. I don't know the specifics of like how the power system, how his domain is gonna work like that. I just think he's going to stop the trial by some means, or the trial is going to be stopped by some means, and they're going to somewhat come to a reconciliation or something like that. Either that, or if Akutami just wants to be really crazy, he could switch over to Megumi's perspective, and we don't know what happens to Yuji yet.
Yo, I thought the same thing. I was like, I've read enough manga to know that the second something cool happens, it's not going to get resolved for another 30 chapters. Bro, like every single time the main character split up, you're like, yeah, none of these fights are getting resolved like in the next 3 months.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, I'm gonna be honest with you. Even though this is really interesting, and I think this is obviously like 11 out of 10 chapter, and the past few chapters have been really good. Honestly, to be honest with you, I think almost every JJK chapter is good, so that's not really saying much for me. But I think this has been really interesting. However, I am so excited to see what Megumi's doing. I want to know if he killed them or not.
Oh yeah, me too.
That would be dope. I want to see him. Because we haven't. Here's the thing: we haven't seen him really fight since Toji. Right? We haven't seen him like actually throw hands since the Toji fight. That's like 50 chapters ago, right? I want to see Megumi beat people up. Right?
No, the last time I think that Megumi fought was with you could. I wouldn't even. No, I was gonna say that, but I don't count that as a fight either. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I was saying it's more of like an intellectual battle, but like I mean like
no.
Really
what I was going to say was inverse guy with him, when he and Yuji.
That was a real fight too.
Yeah.
Honestly, we haven't seen like a real like gritty, I think, somewhat even solo fight since the Finger Bearer, if you want to take it that far back. Because like the Toji fight was more of a wash. Like Toji was so vastly superior. Awasaka was with Yuji. It's been like almost like 100 chapters since we've seen Megumi by himself fight somebody and either be dominant or like be somewhat even. So honestly, I'm really excited for how Akutami portrays it. I'm just excited for He's my favorite character, so seeing him going out and fighting and just beating people up is going to be so dope. So those are my two things. I guess you guys can keep that in mind. Either it's going to switch over to Megumi's perspective, which I'm cool with.
Yo, you know, it's so funny. It cuts you off in between sentence breaks, so it just sounds like you're building up anticipation for the next thing.
Okay, can you hear me now though?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, so where did I cut off? Because I was kind of talking fast.
Megumi's your favorite character.
Okay, so Megumi's my favorite character, right? So I'm just excited to see him beat people up in general. In any case, I think either one of these two things are going to happen. Either it's going to switch to Megumi's perspective, which I'm cool with, or Yuji's going to have the trial interrupted somehow. I don't know the specifics. And then Higuruma's going to like talk to Yuji about it or something. In any case, I just think it's going to be switching POV, or it is going to be staying with Yuji, and the trial is going to be interrupted. Either one of those I'm cool with, and I'm excited to see.
What I think is going to happen, if we're taking this court metaphor all the way through, let's say the spirit finds him guilty, which it did. Do you think Yuji's honestly going to sit there and appeal? Because I cannot imagine him doing that with a straight face. It's just appealing the thing he obviously carries a lot of guilt and shame for. But he can. Because he can.
If Yuji wanted to skirt the responsibilities of that, he would have. He would have lied, or he would have tried to do. He didn't even think about it, right? There was zero thought. He was just like, yeah, I did that, right? Because we know Yuji feels like immense guilt over this. So I mean, I doubt he would do anything to try to like skirt the response. I mean, honestly, you could say like at the end of the chapter, he looked determined or whatever. He doesn't look so much like sad. Like the final panel, he looks sort of like ready to take on the consequences. But I don't think he's going to try to like avoid them.
That's true. Yuji's a good little guy, And
ever.
yeah, so I said Yuji's a good little guy, and I can imagine that the interaction with Higuruma is probably going to go something like this, based off Higuruma's reaction to Yuji confessing, like he was surprised. But I think it was more of a do you read it as a surprise of the action being confirmed, or a surprise that he confessed to the action? Because I read it, you could read it both ways.
Yeah.
So if you take it down the route of, oh my god, this kid like kills like that, oh my god, who did I pick a fight with, versus oh my god, he's so noble, dude, this is a good kid, I'm gonna listen to him, I'm gonna use my 100 points to like make the culling games not involve as much murder.
Here's my thing.
Yeah,
I think Higuruma's killed too many people to be surprised that murder is something that happened, right?
I know, but like based off of his interactions with Yuji, you can't imagine that he looks at Yuji and he's like, yeah, this guy, mass murderer.
I mean, definitely not. But like, I feel like Yuji. I don't think Higuruma could have fought this Yuji and thought that he doesn't have the capability to do it, right? Yuji definitely has like the means to do it if he wanted to, right?
No, not like Sukuna. Not like Sukuna.
Not at the rate, but like Yuji can tear through like anybody that's not a sorcerer. Yuji would literally one shot and murder them, right? Like,
that is such a low bar, man. The weakest sorcerer is always stronger than the strongest human.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, but what I'm saying is like even with sorcerers, honestly, most sorcerers cannot keep up with Yuji. But like if we're saying like doing something, he couldn't be able to do it as fast, obviously, but he'd be able to do that with literally zero difficulty, right?
You think so?
Yuji's, yeah, I don't think there's not like in Shibuya, right? If we replicate it and we just say for some reason Yuji's just insane or something, for some reason he thinks every human is a cursed spirit or something, right? If you want to give him like an in-character reason, he's just running around one-shotting people, right? Literally like popping their heads off, and he's doing it in a couple of minutes, right? He's faster than cars, right? And he can literally one-shot them. I don't know how he wouldn't be able to, right?
No, I'm not saying he wouldn't be able to. I'm just saying he wouldn't, like the total amount of casualties, let's say it takes like 10 minutes for a sorcerer to come and stop him. I think Yuji's only maxing out at like 50 people.
He's getting 100 bodies at least, I'm saying. Like, it depends on how many people are there, right?
Bro, like
we don't know, like, the population.
The only way to get to 100 would literally have to be like in a city and like a subway car, you know what I mean?
That's kind of how Shibuya wasn't in a, like when Sukuna did it wasn't in a subway car, but he was killing people in a packed building, right?
Yeah.
So I think if Yuji just popped into existence at that building, everyone in there is dying in like 2 minutes max.
So final thought. Oh god. So final thoughts on the chapter. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Final thoughts. Great chapter. One of my favorite in a while. I think that Higuruma is going to end this in a unconventional way, or I think Akutami is going to switch our perspectives over. Overall, really liked it, and it was my favorite chapter of the week, as it is usually. So, that's my thoughts.
Yeah, bro, I'm such a JJK like fan or stan, whatever you want to call it, because every single time I read a Jujutsu Kaisen manga chapter, I'm like, yep, this is great. This is fantastic. He doesn't miss. The only time I ever felt like cheated by a JJK chapter was when Akutami did that thing where he pauses the A story for the B story, when I got so invested in the A story. And I know that, like, if I was to look at it objectively, yeah, the B story is going to slap too. And in this case, the A story slaps. And I just know, assuming he switches it for Megumi next week, I just know that's gonna be amazing too. What I want personally, first of all, I give this chapter like a 7 or an 8 out of 10. It was really good. But what I really want to see in Jujutsu Kaisen, and I think why I've been so enthralled with it, as much as I have been since I started, is because like people actually die, which is like the dumbest thing to like love about a series that's like shonen, because people usually don't die en masse. Because like, let's be real, the like Shibuya wouldn't have happened in like any other shonen. Can you imagine like a Sukuna Shibuya event happening in like Black Clover, for example?
Well, here's the thing. I will say this. I do give JJK a lot of credit with like killing off people, However, I don't think Sukuna killing people was something that's that crazy.
I do, and
Like
here
in Shonen,
and
because
here's why.
killing random people is something that happens. I can name you probably 10 Shonen off the top of my head that happens to that
Na-
happens in.
okay, fine.
Okay, so Naruto what happens in the war. Like I can just like it happens even in Black Clover. Like Black Clover kills randoms all the time. I just don't think those deaths
No,
mean
I was
more for
referencing.
Sukuna than they do for the narrative.
So when I say Shibuya, I do collectively mean Sukuna and the arc, because for the arc, like Nanami died, Nobara died. Those are like main characters, right? Gojo got sealed, etc. And if you think about it, and apply it to other shonen, let's take. I'm not going to touch Bleach with the 10-foot pole in this fucking episode, dude. I'm tempted, but I'm not going to. I'm not going to give in to that temptation. Like Black Clover, in their like raid arc where they come across the devil, nobody dies aside from like 2 elves. But for example, Marileona, she should have died, especially after all the elves powered up, because there were 5 of them. You know what I mean? And she was like beat.
Here's my thing. I think Black Clover is a bad example because I think that's something Black Clover does particularly bad. That's not something Shonen as a
I
whole
know.
does.
Okay, but for
I think I
like
think it would be like I think it's a little bit, not to say you're doing this intentionally, maybe not, but I think it's a bit cherry picking because Black Clover I think it's almost notorious for that. It's kind of like almost like a fairy.
okay, fine. I'll try to be more fair. I want to My Hero Academia. When Shigaraki became like awakened, I couldn't even tell you how many like citizens died because it just looked like it was an abandoned city, to be honest with you, prior to his decay. And by the way, that time he did like basically destroy a city with his decay, back in the Villain Academia arc. It was literally an entire town of bad guys. Can you imagine the level of hoops you would need to jump through? If you're like a mangaka, you're like, yeah, man, every single person in this little city, they're all evil. All an evil corporation, this whole city. All of them.
But to be fair, he also killed off people like Mountain Lady, not Mountain Lady, a Lady Midnight, who was like a character who's been in the series the entire time. Like he killed off a decent chunk of people that like mattered, right?
Okay, then why is All Might alive? Because for all intents and purposes,
that's similar to saying like why is Gojo like alive? Like he's alive, but
because
but they're both handicapped in the series, unable to do anything important.
Okay, I wouldn't even call anything about Gojo handicapped aside from like his own internal like I don't want to kill philosophy, but with All Might,
Gojo doesn't want to kill. I don't know. No,
let me
Gojo's completely fine with it.
Let me rephrase. Like if Gojo really wanted to, he can just become emperor of the Jujutsu Kaisen world. Like if you like in an afternoon, you know what I mean? But for example, All Might was literally handicapped. Like
yeah, that's what I'm saying. I feel like if we praise JJK for doing that, I think we should praise My Hero for doing that because both of those were almost unrivaled in the verse. Well, Gojo is definitely more unrivaled, but All Might like did literally kind of take on the final villain a little bit earlier than expected.
No, because he had the first 2 seasons were All Might boss fights, and he definitely should have died after that thing with All for One. And I understand that the reason he didn't was because he like couldn't die until he taught Midoriya everything. But when you read down the manga, which I think is a great segue for our next topic, which is going to be our reviews for the My Hero Academia chapters this week, which by the way, I'm patting myself on the back for segueing us into that topic like that. Yeah, but he doesn't do that. And All Might doesn't want to die because he's like, I need to be there to train Midoriya to like teach him how to use his powers and make him like a proper successor. But bro, Deku's like, nah, man, you good. I don't need you anymore. Like, just go home, old man.
I think that's more of a problem. Okay, I will say this. I have a video on it. Well, not yet, but like I'm gonna post a video. Probably like by the time this ends up, it's probably gonna be out like the next day, whatever. Talking about like Deku's like disappointing some like somewhat clickbaity thing. Basically, I'm talking about why I think that execution of that arc was not horrible, but it was in comparison to what it could have been pretty piss poor, right? I think there was a lot more potential than.
Are you talking about the like the final arc?
The villain hunt arc. Like
where Shigaraki awakens?
No. So I'm talking about right after the war where Deku's like all dirty and grimy or whatever. I think the execution of that arc, and really Deku as a character recently, is kind of just, he's still good. He's still, to me, one of the best characters, like top 5 in the series. But I feel like in terms of his potential, he's not living up to it. And I made a video talking about that. But regardless, right, I do think that is not a problem of All Might should have like been dying. But I think that
he just kind of
rather
seems
it's
like
a problem of the execution of his, like, him being a mentor.
Yeah, and the writing's on the wall for All Might, because I can feel Horikoshi's desire to kill All Might via Shigaraki doing it, you know, bringing this thing full circle. You can feel Horikoshi's desire to have this one perfect moment with Shigaraki killing All Might and really bringing the story full circle. And you know, bro, you just know he's going to want to do it in front of Deku. He's going to be like, yeah, Shigaraki's going to kill All Might in front of Deku. He's going to be so fucking helpless. And then it'll be like this really sick moment. And I don't know what it is, but I just feel like he's forcing it, because that's not the way the story he's actually written is panning out. So for me, a great example of, like, I think accidental good writing on Horikoshi's part, and I know that's gonna sound condescending because I'm assuming he's not doing this intentionally, was this past chapter, right, where Stars and Stripes. You read it, right? Yeah. Thank you. It's an art for me, but you read the last chapter, right? Like from yesterday? Yeah. So Stars and Stripes basically won for all intents and purposes. She basically beat Shigaraki at the cost of her own life, and whatever damage she does is going to have major impacts on Shigaraki as an organism moving forward, right? The sheer amount of damage his body has taken, I doubt that, like, I'll put it to you this way. All hope of a perfected Shigaraki like body for All for One is basically gone. There is no way that, there's no way that body's coming out like as intended in the blueprint, right? Like those are damaged goods at this point.
I hope so. I feel like Horikoshi, I'm not gonna say he is or isn't. I feel like he can fumble because of the thing. Like, if I'm thinking it from the perspective of an audience who only has limited information on where the story can go. To me, I don't see any way Horikoshi can make Shigaraki just not lose all of his quirks, right? That doesn't make much sense. Like, he should literally, because if Stars and Stripes, like, New Order is just destroying other quirks, right? Mm-hmm. He should literally Shigaraki should be quirkless in like a chapter, right? But obviously that's not going to happen. To me, I feel like he can make this impactful, and we'll talk about this, I guess, when we talk about more in depth on the chapter specifically, not just overall My Hero. He can make it impactful, but he can also very easily fumble and make this a pretty, like, wasteful use of her character, I think.
Yeah.
And make it kind of lame.
Especially because, like, if what her fight to Shigaraki amounts to is essentially nothing, and this was all, like, a massive waste of time, that's gonna make me, like, a little upset, because Stars and Stripes, the quirk, the character, the entire fight had such massive lore impacts based on how Horikoshi wrote it, as, All for One secretly had his eye on this particular quirk the entire time. It was actually part of his, like, genius master plan. It was to get this quirk and One for All and become, like, the ultimate deity in My Hero Academia, right?
Yeah.
And then the person with the quirk, like, Shigaraki takes the quirk, this whole fight happens, and then he's just like, welp, I am fine. I'm like, then what the you don't need to make him Shigaraki this much stronger to, like, justify a fight with Deku. You know, Deku's still like a 16-year-old who gets his bones broken. Like, he can't even use all the quirks yet, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So I guess, do you think it's cool to just segue into the chapter fully now?
Yeah.
I'm gonna be honest, I didn't like this chapter all that much. Now, I want to phrase it like this, right? I am not surprised that this happened. So before anybody's like, this is so obvious, right? I'm not surprised that this happened, right? Ever since Stars and Stripes was introduced, at first it was a feeling, but you knew, everybody who has a brain knew she wasn't going to beat Shigaraki, right?
Yeah.
However, so that immediately narrowed Horikoshi's options, right? Mm-hmm. And then when he introduced how powerful a quirk was, that narrowed them even further, right? Because he could do one of one of like 3 or 4 things, right? He could either A, have her win, not an option really. So now we have 3 things. He could B, have her get bullied and lose, right? Not really an option considering she was just introduced as like the #1 hero in the US. So we have 2 options. And then you have her do damage but not win, likely, and that's kind of what happened. Or you have her like win, kind of like beat him down and think he's dead and then leave, which didn't happen, right? And I don't really like this option because I feel like I don't like jobber characters. I don't like characters that are introduced for the sole reason of like hyped up. This, even though we never mentioned this character, they were super powerful and super important, right? And now we're gonna have them fight this villain and then they lose, right? I'm much more of a, if Stars and Stripes was like a character, I don't know, who'd been in the background, been slowly building, and we'd seen her maybe fight before, whatever, and then see her lose, that's dope. Like, for example, if Gojo and Sukuna happens or whatever in like a conventional manner, that'll be dope, even if Gojo loses, because he's obviously not a jobber. We've seen him put in work. That loss will mean something. Stars and Stripes loss only means something because Horikoshi put words on paper to say it does, right? Yeah. There's no actions backing that. There's no, and not to say you can't like it. I think there's decent aspects to it. I think he did the best, bro, with the bad decision that he made.
So here's I agree. He definitely, and I'll be honest, he killed it. Stars and Stripes, the character and the quirk, is fucking amazing. And the reaction to it, like on Annie Twitter and just generally the community, has been positive. Like, people like her. Like, I fucking like her, right? But I think what all of our collective problem is that she was, if you break it down into like a percentage of the wider My Hero Academia lore, she was introduced, explained why she was so important, and then beaten within like a month in the last 8 years that My Hero Academia has been like being written. So it almost feels like a cheat in the 11th hour. Because bro, she's too significant.
I don't know. I feel like I mean, okay. So let me just give the general, I guess, like, because we kind of talked about like the plot synopsis breakdown for the JJK chapter. So basically, for all those that don't know and are still watching this, or whatever, right? Stars and Stripes fight Shigaraki. She loses. She gets she gets disintegrated, and she made it so her quirk ravages other quirks. Right. That's basically the 10-second version of the chapter, and that's cool in concept. Here's my thing. This is not a good thing in my opinion. This is the best thing Horikoshi could have done as soon as he entered Stars and Stripes into the series. As soon as he made her character this powerful and supposedly this important to the overall world of My Hero, this is probably the best outcome, right? I think, personally, he fucked up by having her show up here, right? I get you wanting to add world building and make the world seem a little bit more alive, and it makes sense that Shigaraki becomes a world threat. However, this should have been built up to before. This is too late, right, in my opinion.
Bro, I swear, the best way I could describe Horikoshi's running style is, I don't know if you've ever seen this movie called Whiplash, but there's this scene in it where it's basically about a guy in music school. Hold on, let me quiet Facebook because I keep getting notifications. All right, so it's about this guy who goes to music school, and he's a drummer, and he gets this really hard-ass instructor that's like...
I've heard of that. Of that. I haven't watched it. I've heard it's a really good movie.
It's amazing. Yeah, you should definitely watch it. But like, there's this scene where he's performing in front of the teacher, and the guy is like just sweating, giving it his everything, and the guy keeps stopping him. He's like, okay, so I'm gonna help try to make you understand what the problem is, but first I want you to tell me what you think the problem is. Are you rushing or are you dragging? And basically, rushing is too fast and dragging is too slow. And so the guy's like, I don't know. And he's like, well, do it again. And every single time they go through this interaction, the teacher gets progressively angrier until the last time where he throws a chair at him. Because he gets like angry that he doesn't know. So whenever I think to pacing in anime, I think back to that scene because I'm like, mangakas either rush or drag, but Horikoshi's the only manga I've ever seen in my entire life to do both on such extreme ends of the spectrum. The entirety of the My Hero Academia story has taken place over like 3 to 4 years. No, not even, like 1 to 2. But at the same time, too much has happened in that amount of time.
I agree. I think, well, here, okay.
I probably didn't.
The way I'm talking makes it seem like I don't even like the series. I do like it. I think I have like a solid 8.
Yeah.
But here's my problem, right? there are key things that I think Horikoshi doesn't do. And I'll talk about that in a bit. We can talk about My Hero as
Bro,
a whole in a little bit. I want to say this.
I probably didn't need to say that thing about Whiplash.
No, it's cool. I think it was a good analogy of how he does both. I just want to make it clear, like I have My Hero like a solid 8. I think it's a good series, and I think it does more right than it does wrong. However, Horikoshi does have some big narrative. He messes up sometimes. He fumbles. Like most manga could do that, right? And it's fine to think that Horikoshi doesn't, in your opinion, whatever. But I think this was a big fumble. He tried to do the best he could with it, and I respect that a lot. I think messing up and then being able to somewhat recover that is extremely impressive. However, I do think that there's an inherent problem with introducing someone this strong this late and then having them still lose, right? And that's fine. Obviously, he needs her to lose. That makes sense. But it shouldn't. I think the entire idea of it having to be like this is messed up. And I just think it was convoluted that she lost the way she. I don't know, not convoluted. That's not the way I want to put it.
Like she still went out like hard. You know, it was a nice exit.
Yeah, exactly. He did well, but I don't care. I don't care about her to the same degree that, like, for example, All Might versus All for One, with both of them somewhat taking a loss there, right? That really meant a lot because All Might had shown the work. He had shown he didn't just state he was the strongest hero in Japan and then lose, right? Or barely get a win. Like Stars and Stripes. Stars and Stripes literally was just like, yeah, I'm strong. And it's like, cool, I understand you're quite strong, but we don't have that backlog of information, of emotional connection, of narrative implications, all this building up to her loss. It's just, I'm strong. I'll tell you I'm strong for the first 2 chapters, and then I lose. Yeah. I'm not a fan, personally.
So here's what I think. I think that the only way to salvage this for Horikoshi is to keep the damage that she did as like a very significant plot point. Because if he just abandons it, like if Shigaraki or / All for One is just like, ha ha ha, I've devised the solution, I've won in the end, then it'll all be for nothing, and that'll actually be bad writing. But if he keeps it as a plot point of, yeah, this fight crippled Shigaraki's body in a way that just can't be recovered, he's never going to reach 100% of his full potential, and it makes the fight slightly easier for Class 1A and Deku, etc., then I think that'll go an insanely long way into aiding My Hero Academia's general storyline.
For sure. I do think, like I said, I was talking with this with a friend of mine, right, the other day, and I was saying, if Horikoshi makes some of his quirks, can you imagine if he gets Decay, like, destroyed? That would be so crazy.
I know. Bro, I'm going to be real with you. Without Decay, Shigaraki is basically just a beefed up Nomu, and I think, oh my god, it's going to make the fight so much easier. Because part of the reason it was so hard...
Deku's putting the hands on Shigaraki without Decay, I'm going to be real with you.
Easily. And the funniest part is that I think that Decay was such a huge problem for them just because of the blast radius or whatever you want to call it. Like, just getting him to stay off the ground is the hard part. Like, if they just fought him, Shigaraki's not winning.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I don't think Deku has much help in this fight. Like, I know the theme is going to be, like, it's our Hero Academia. Yeah. And there's going to be a lot of people, and that's cool. That's a theme. That's fine. I do think a 1v1 can be cooler. Just I like the 1v1s, but obviously from a thematic standpoint, it makes sense, right? It's understandable. So I'm not going to say it's bad writing. What I will say is, who's helping Deku putting hands on Shigaraki?
Endeavor.
Maybe Endeavor, right? But Endeavor got kind of bullied by Shigaraki, an even weaker version. Like Shigaraki stomped on Endeavor's spine, right?
Yeah, but first of all, Endeavor, just I gotta touch on this because you just reminded me. This is the funniest thing in My Hero Academia's story structure. So you know how Horikoshi likes to do parallels, like Endeavor, Bakugo, Deku, All Might, etc. And yes, I said Bakugo, not Todoroki, because like you can tell the number 2 complex. No, sure. Yeah. It's just I know some people will be like, oh, didn't you mean Todoroki? No, I didn't. Fuck you. Sorry, a little bit of passive aggressiveness there.
I feel you.
But yeah, when it comes to Horikoshi's like preference for themes, I just want to go back to this thing I said about you can sense certain things he does, and I want to know your take on this, or if I'm just like reading into it a little bit too much, but in that fight between All For One and All Might, it was like a one-on-one fight, and the implication that I got was that this was the last like fight that would be settled like that, because based off of
It's
Deku,
definitely the death of an era. It's the death of a singular person carrying the burden of the world.
Because I fucking know. So, okay, I'm calling it right now. Like, whoever's listening to this, clip this if I'm right. Here's how it's gonna go. Not only will the fight be pitched like Shigaraki versus all of Class 1A all united, but I think at some point they're gonna be beating up Shigaraki so bad, and Horikoshi's gonna do this one thing where he gets all the League of Villains people to join Shigaraki as like see, the villain has comrades too.
Yeah, dude. Listen, I'm gonna be honest with you. Like, I think, like, obviously they're going to win. They're going to win, man.
I know, but like,
I can't conceptualize the League of Villains and like all the Nomus losing to Class. Like, they're getting. Cause let's say Deku and Shigaraki occupy each other, right? Everybody like Endeavor is gonna handle a couple of Nomis, and then the rest of them are just gonna get bullied. Like, I don't know, man.
I like that you said Nomis, because I can.
Nomis.
I know, right? Imagine like fucking Nomu hanging out in like a break room, like, hey, what up, Nomi? Anyway, so. You know, I was thinking about Bakugo's role in the story, because I made a video about him a while ago, about him being useless, and the worst fucking thing in the world happened, because, bro, the literal, like, chapter that got released after I made that video was, oh, by the way, all of Class 1A is here, and Bakugo apologized, they're gonna fight together. I'm like, well, fuck you, Horikoshi. I have this great...
Horikoshi watched your video and was like, oh, bet, for real? Okay,
yeah,
we'll
bro,
see if he's useless.
He changed the entire chapter, like, the same night. He was like, fuck this guy.
I'm gonna be honest. Little gripe I have, and I obviously covered it a little bit more in the video. That apology, or not the apology, I think Bakugo's apology was like there for a while, but that confrontation should have been, Deku should have been cooking by himself for 2-3 more chapters, I think, at bare minimum. I think he should have been dealing. I think Horikoshi does a very poor job of giving us introspection onto Deku's mindset, right? I think he does horrible at that. Like,
really?
Obviously, we can infer at what Deku's thinking, right? But where is the, like... And once again, it's implicit, but to a point, you have to explicitly show some of the character's moments, right? You have to do that. But, like, Deku... Where's the lingering... There's no lingering anything. I feel like with he does it much better with his villains, right? With a Shigaraki, with a Dabi, with a Twice, with a Toga, right? He's able to explore their mental state in a way he just doesn't do with Deku, and it's so frustrating because I think his character has so much of a higher skill ceiling than everybody else's.
You know, it's funny that we're talking about My Hero Academia in this way, because all we were doing for the Jujutsu Kaisen part, we were just gassing Jujutsu Kaisen up the entire time, and now we're like, all we're doing is like levying all this criticism towards My Hero Academia, justifiably so. I 100% agree. But it's super funny because based on these impressions, had we not said anything, everybody would be like, oh yeah, they love JJK. These are fucking JJK fanboys, which we are. I'm not gonna like.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, but like they'd also be like, man, these guys are the biggest My Hero Academia haters. No, I love the series.
I think
frustrating. It's so frustrating.
It's frustrating because, and it's frustrating not just because I don't. It's frustrating because I think the series can be so much better at times.
I know.
Like, obviously, it's an 8. But there are certain, the character setups, all these things can easily be raised to a point where, obviously not now, I don't think. I think we're really late in the game for that. But I think certain things may be executed better, whatever. It could be, for me, like, in the same realm of JJK. It's just not because I don't like the interactions as much. Whatever, right? Like I said, got it in as 8. These criticisms come, for sure, from a place of desiring more from the series. Not that it's not like oh, this is bad and here's why. It's I like this and it could be better and here's why. That's how I feel about it.
Hey, you know, I was thinking about all the gripes I had with My Hero Academia. I was just like, I want to sit down and list all of them one by one. And I think what I kept kind of circling back to in one way or another was just the character development. It goes... all these characters get character development like one after each other. You get an arc, you get an arc, you get an arc, you get an arc, right? And then at some point he just instantly forgets that he ever wrote anything about these characters in his entire life. And
Yeah.
I think a really good example would be like Kirishima. Like Kirishima got some nice character development, and then I think it was after the overhaul arc or something where Horikoshi was like, "Who is this guy?" Because Kirishima gets this insanely like nice power up, and then he's just forgotten. Like that's it. And then Deku just casually breaks out of his hold or whatever. Like it just bugs me because if you're gonna set up all these side characters to be like a Justice League or something, because like that's the vibe that Horikoshi seems to be writing in, then why the hell are all these members so much weaker? Because I like okay, I don't know if you've read Justice League comics, but it seems like the good ones are written like everybody has like a thing to do, a role to play, and it's really nice. The bad ones are always okay. We need to hold this guy off until Superman gets here.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like okay. So I think if you're gonna use that Kirishima, however you want to say it, is a bad example because I do feel like he is a role player. Like he took down. He was a pretty big factor in taking down Gigantomachia, right? I feel like you could use someone like a Denki, right? Or like I don't know. I feel like Class 1A is very hit or miss for me. Like if you were to ask me on certain days what I think about them,
Sorry,
I'd be
sorry.
like,
I thought of something better. Ida.
hmm.
Ida.
Ida, okay. I don't like Ida actually, and it's not
Wow.
because I think I don't like him honestly. I think he's fine. I don't like his personality
Mm.
really at all. It's not like I dislike him. It's just if you were to ask me how I feel about Ida, I'd be like, he's a character that exists.
Bro,
Like,
he got some insanely amazing character development in the Stain arc, like stellar character development, right?
sure.
But he was absent for a good chunk of the second half of My Hero Academia up until this point. Up until getting Deku back, I'd almost forgotten Ito was a character.
I'm gonna say this. I think that, like, I don't know if this is like an unpopular opinion. I think Uraraka is much better at being like a role player than someone like Ida, and I like her a lot more in the story. And I don't even like her all that much. I think she's very overhated and somewhat underrated by the My Hero
I like,
fan base.
bro. I like Uraraka because you know, damn it, that's a Bleach take. Never mind, I can't do it.
Oh, you are not about to trash. You are not about
Bro,
to
I hate her
go
so much,
on,
Ronan.
dude.
Bro, I hate her
You're
so
trash for that
much.
take.
I
You're
hate her
trash for that take.
so
You're trash for
much.
that take.
She is
Listen,
such
listen,
a
listen.
garbage character, man.
You're literally wrong. Anyways, we'll talk.
Yes.
We'll talk. We're gonna save that for next episode.
Yeah.
God, man, that's
Yeah, dude.
all right. Whatever.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh man.
Yeah. Okay. Back to
In
My
any
Hero
case,
Academia. Yeah.
I like Uraraka. Whatever.
Mhm.
Right. Anyways,
Uraraka.
overall for the chapter, since we're kind of talking about that initially,
Mhm.
I like ignoring the other problems I have with Horikoshi's like certain like way of going about things. Right.
Mhm.
I don't. I don't like. I think the chapter. I respect the chapter from like a writer's perspective. It's like wow, it was pretty impressive to retrieve that fumble in really any form. Right.
Yeah.
That's impressive to me.
Mhm.
However, I don't think you should have been in a position where you fumbled like this to begin with. Therefore, I don't like the chapter. Right. That's how I feel about it. That's where I stand. So I respect it. I think he did the best with what he had. But remember, he put himself there to begin
Yeah.
with. So,
So
kind of how do you feel about that?
So what I feel about My Hero Academia as it stands right now, just to kind of wrap up my overall thoughts on this chapter and the entire series as a whole, is that I have trouble buying into a good My Hero Academia chapter because I'm always ready for Horikoshi to take it away in like a following chapter. So for example, like he wrote a I think objectively fantastic chapter with Stars and Stripes fight with Shigaraki all for one. And that was a big development, right? But like I said before, if in the next chapter or something, Shigaraki is like, I found a way to make it so that none of the damage incurred in this fight means anything and it will have no lasting effects, I will be furious and it will have retroactively made that amazing chapter awful because it will have meant nothing. At that point, it's just filler.
Yeah, and I think that I also feel like if just garbage quirks that Shigaraki never used are lost either, I won't care. I
That
think that
too.
would be lame. He's like, yeah, I had the quirk to, stick my feet in the sand really quickly or something. I don't know, just really bold, like just random garbage quirk. If those
Yeah.
are the only ones destroyed, I'm gonna be heated too. I want something. I want some real impact. But you said something earlier because we would you say that's kind of like wrapped up our stuff on like My Hero?
Uh,
Um,
this can be the wrap
kind
up.
of. Well, this isn't really related to My Hero. It's more related to something you said that kind of caught my ear, I guess.
Oh, okay. So
Um,
yeah, overall
do you
ratings.
think
Wait, overall
overall,
ratings. Yeah, I give it a conditional 8 out of 10
you have it higher than the JJK chapter?
because it was technically more happened, and I did like the
Ooh,
and I did
that
listen.
that's
I
funny.
did appreciate the twist of Shigaraki actually having incurred like an insanely specific amount of damage to his like
Mhm,
being, because it wasn't so much that she like beat up his body, like she attacked his quirks. Like that's an objectively
mhm.
like cool thing.
Sure, sure, sure. I have this chapter like a 6 out of 10, I think, for me.
Conditionally or objectively?
Well, I want to get into that in a little bit, but
Okay.
I think it can. It's a 6 out of 10 that can be made worse. Listen, let me put it like this: it's a 6 out of 10 that can be put bumped up to a 7 depending on the impact, or bumped down to a 5 depending on the lack of it.
Okay, I got you.
So it's like the middle of the road, like assuming, like yeah, that's what I'll say. 6 out of 10, middle of the road.
Cool.
But something that like kind of caught my attention earlier is you were like, "This is an objectively good chapter." Do you think writing like a story can be objectively well written? Because
Yes.
that's an interesting topic. Ooh,
So,
yes, a good topic we disagree on. I like it.
okay, so here's the thing. If you were to pick up a how to write book or a how
Mhm.
to be a filmmaker book, there are always these like tenets and rules of like practice that you need to follow, which let's take a sitcom for example. That's like the easiest thing that comes to mind for me.
Mhm.
Sitcom structure is A plot, B plot, commercial break, conflict, commercial break, and then resolution, and that's the last commercial break, right? These are like the things you need to do. That's just the structure of the thing you need to write. But for example, not every sitcom episode is amazing, but the ones that are amazing, they still use that plot, that structure. So the structure is always like it's a fact, right? Like that's just how it's done. Like there's no opinion to be had there, right?
But what are you saying? What part of it are you saying? You're saying the structure that it does this, then
Yeah.
that
No,
is factual.
yes, like because that's just
Okay.
how these like things
So
are written, right? It's like saying
okay.
it's like the difference between a light novel and a manga is literally just purely talking structure is the amount of words to drawing ratios, like
Yeah,
right?
sure. Okay,
Right.
that's objective. Okay,
Yes.
I think so. I'll ask you this: do you think something can be objectively good or
Yeah,
bad?
I was getting to that.
Okay, okay, go
So
ahead.
with that in mind, right? Like you have this, we all agree like the structure is the structure. Like depending on whether we like it or not, it just doesn't change what it is. So when you get down to it, that's like the baseline that we're all building towards, building from. Like that's the base of our structure.
Sure, sure. So
So
here's what I'll say then. Okay, go ahead, go ahead.
so
Continue.
from there, generally the things that people want without necessarily them knowing that that's what they want. So, for example, people want to feel enjoyment, they want to feel attachment to the characters, they want X, Y, and Z, but they don't know how they want it. So, for example, if you're writing like Black Clover or like Jujutsu Kaisen, you're obviously not writing to make it suck. You want people
Yeah,
to like the
obviously.
work, get engrossed in the lore, etc., etc.
Mhm.
Where different things matter is in how you execute upon these feelings that you're basically now in control of. So I hate when people say some shit like it's generic so it's bad, because it's all about like what you're really trying to say is the structure is perfect but they don't do anything to build on top of it. Like they don't paint the walls, they don't, I don't know, add air conditioning. I know this metaphor is getting away from me, but I'm trying to be as like visual as I can.
No, I get you.
Yeah. So from there, if you have the building made the correct way and you do all of essentially what's required of you, then you just have a story that exists. That is the
Yeah,
most
sure.
yeah, that is the most
So
technical, bland like thing you could possibly make. However, when you get to the finer details is what separates something being good from something being bad. So we can say that uh, something being objectively good follows the structure all the way through. It has the correct moments to pay off like certain things in the chapters or whatever, or episodes, whatever medium you're consuming, and it's elicits a feeling of familial completion to the audience viewer. They're like, ah, yes, this is supposed to happen, and it did, but not necessarily the plot. Like, for example, if it's like the end of like a pilot episode of a show, right? You know that the only thing this thing is meant to do is to get you attached to the rest of the show to keep you watching. Or like for YouTube, like because we're both YouTubers,
Yep.
You know generally what a good thumbnail is, right? You know it has to be like 3 elements max, like minimal on text. You know you can't just go in there and fucking upload a picture of the Mona Lisa without like a captivating title or something, right?
Here's the
like,
thing, you bring that up, but like the thing is, different thumbnails work for, like, I've seen somebody, like, I don't know if you know the Masked Man, you know, homie of mine, but he uploaded this thumbnail of just like a greater than sign, right?
What was the title?
Like, we need to stop this or something.
Yes.
Something like that,
yeah.
right?
It's a completed package. That's what I'm saying.
But I'm saying it's like that's not what someone would. Okay, I'll let you finish because my argument is a little bit different than that. Go ahead and finish your argument.
So, like, with structure, right? Like, whatever, the thumbnail by itself is not the structure, right? It's a part of a structure. It's a missing piece if it's just by itself. Like, if he uploaded that with like 0 title and like 0 context about what his channel was, and 0 context about like what that symbol means in relation to like anime Twitter or something, it's just a picture of a less than sign with a guy uploaded with a guy from like with like a red profile picture.
Yeah.
So fundamentally, you still need to know what it is that's being made. So in the example of like a manga, you need like the pictures with the words to make a story, right? That's literally just what you. That's like the most basic shit.
So far, I want to say I agree with what you're saying. Objectively speaking, in order for it to be a manga, there are certain things that you need, like prerequisites that you need to like reach. Okay, so I agree with that up to this point. I just want to make that clear. So like I'm not disagreeing with anything you've said so far.
So I figured out an easier way to like put my thoughts. Okay. Bro, I know Doofy's watching or something, or like listening to this part, and he's just like typing away like his script for the response.
Don't worry, Doofy. I got you, Doofy. I got the arguments for you on deck.
So
go ahead.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to say is just let's say, like, I use the terms objective and subjective a little bit, tongue in cheek, but let's assume good and bad equals to success or flop. Just
okay, sure.
Just for the sake of this thing, right? For let's say, why is battle shonen so popular, the genre, right? Because if it was really just like why didn't it just end at Dragon Ball? Why wasn't it just like Dragon Ball is it? That's it. Battle shonen, it's over. So why then did Naruto pick up? Why then did Bleach pick up, etc., etc.? It's because there is a general like feeling of the same structure, the same kind of story being told, but all the little nuances are what give each thing its like distinct identities. Like, for example, I would consider One Piece or maybe Naruto pretty boilerplate like shonen anime, because they lack any kind of, they don't do anything subversive enough to warrant them being like, oh wow, this is like revolutionary. And that's not to say that it's always been like that, right? Like, obviously nobody knew what the fuck it was when it first came out, but I meant as time went on, they became the standard for what the genre is like considered. And now you get shit like JJK, which in my opinion is not standard. Non-standard.
Sure.
I feel you.
But here's the thing, I think that's a little bit unfair to assess, like,
I'm not done
being cliche. Okay.
So oh my god, there's a fucking siren. Are you shitting me? Okay, bro, did somebody answer a siren with a different siren? Bro, cops are getting fucking weird out there. Sorry, that really threw me off. What? Do you get their attention with a different siren? Like, what? Is it like truck drivers honking their horns at each other?
I have no idea.
Yeah. Okay, anyway, sorry. So if you it's good that it's interesting that you bring up cliches, because for something to have been a cliche, it has to like have worked, been duplicated into oblivion to where it became the norm, and then from there, whatever subverts it or adds on to it or does whatever it needs to is what eventually breaks through, and then it kind of rinse repeats, right?
Sure.
So my take is, at some point when something becomes so completely repeated over and like done over and over and over and over again until it's become a staple of the thing you're making, it gets, that thing essentially transforms into a piece of the structure. And so it becomes just as truthful or like objective as the general structure of the medium. So
Okay, so I have a few. Obviously, I'm going to disagree because I disagree with the premise or like the conclusion you draw from that. But so here's the first for, like questions I need to like get like clarification on. So one, do you think right that success or failure is objectivity? Right, like if a manga does well. Okay, let me put it like this. Let me ask you this question first. This is the base of it. Can a manga be objectively better than another manga?
yes, but it has nothing to do with the level of enjoyment somebody could feel.
Okay.
So,
All right.
in
What is that objectivity based off of?
elements of writing a story. So,
Well, what? Okay, so let's unravel that.
uh,
What elements of writing a story make another one object? Like, give me like one or two, right? What
so
makes a story objectively better than another one?
depth,
Okay.
themes, and
Why?
execution.
Okay,
Because
so why does the depth or themes of a story make it better or worse? Like objectively speaking, not to your own personal taste.
okay, so objectively speaking, the best way I could describe it is, so the sensation I feel when I enjoy something is vastly different from the sensation I feel when I can see the merit in something. So if I were to pull up a piece of art right now, like I don't know, Da Vinci's like Naked Man or something, right? And I was going to sit there and tell you this thing was like mathematically pristine, right? And I'm explaining why it's like people have their panties in a twist over this like naked guy in a circle.
Sure.
You would come away knowing all the same information, and you can then say, "Oh yeah, I can either see why people like this. I can see why people. I don't see why people like this." But it doesn't change the fact that the information is the information. So the amount of like shit that like describes it, and the amount of stuff it is, doesn't change based off your enjoyment. But I don't think you'd be foolish enough to say it's not there.
Okay, so I think here's the problem. I think what you're creating or what you're I think failing to realize is that there's a distinction between something being good because it is the case objectively, like observably, right? So by like I don't know, like a scientific method or being out like being observable to like object. Okay, so like let me give you an example of something that's subjective, right?
Okay.
If I hold up two of my fingers, right? As long as we have a common understanding of what two means, every single person on the planet that has the visual acuity to do so will understand that I'm holding up two fingers. It is not possible to like obviously providing you have the knowledge of what these things are. It is not possible to say it is not two, right? Two is two is two is 2. It's
Mm-hmm.
not. There's mathematically there's no distinction there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we set that aside. What I'm saying, the reason I'm saying manga and art in general, at least the quality of it is subjective, is because these things that we consider good are based off of a foundation that is not agreed upon, nor can be objectively proven outside of our own minds, right? So for example, right?
Oh wait, hold on.
If you
Let's get into the philosophy of this for a second, because it actually does favor my argument for one simple reason, right? Human beings are the only arbiters of truth because the only other people that make art are other human beings. So it's
that's
safe.
fine.
So it's safe to
If
say,
you say we're the arbiters of truth, though, when one person disagrees on that fundamental truth, that's showing that it's only subjective.
no, no,
What I'm saying is
no, no.
there are truths to you, right?
So
But
I'm
there are not objective truths of the universe or of art like that have to exist, right?
Yes, because art is inherently subjective like that. But what I mean to say is that, let's say that there's this like drawing that fucks up with the part of your brain that senses that like sees the color blue, right? I think there's actually art like this. If you like look at it for too long, it messes up your like corneas or something, and you can't see colors the right way. But
Sure.
if you were to look at this thing and be like, yeah, this is, I don't know, dangerous art or something, and somebody was like, but all it does is just change my like color perception, it wouldn't change the function that it does, right? The person would need to acknowledge the function. So to me, a person acknowledging the function of objectively good, like in story, is just them saying, yes, it does the things that like a story does. I just don't enjoy it, or I do enjoy it.
Well, here's the thing though. What I'm saying is that fundamentally is subjective, right? So like, let's look at it, right? Some person, right, had to create this idea or this framework of what quality is, right? This is good because I associate quality, whether that be enjoyment or like a thematic, question or this philosophical discussion that maybe arises from this narrative, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I think this story is good, or I'm asserting that this story is good because of these reasons, right? Now, what I think you're saying is stories can be good based off of that framework. And I agree. I think a story can be good based off of a framework, and it can be somewhat provably so to that framework. What I mean is like following these set standards, this story checks box A, box B, box C, and by that metric, it is good. However, what you fail to do, I think, is show why this metric in and of itself is objective. Why is what somebody, or maybe a group of people, a collective, whatever, why is what they set forward inherently objective to the case? Like, so for example, mathematically, this exists outside of myself, right? 2 being 2 is not something that is inherent to me or inherent to a shared experience. It is something that can be observable and objectively so throughout everything, regardless of upbringing, all that stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why is, like, so if you say depth is objectively good, right? Why does that have more merit than me saying depth is not objectively good? And in fact, let's say, obviously I don't think this, but let me play devil's advocate.
I don't like to use the word
bad.
I don't want to say objectively like good or bad. I more like to say it's more like checking a box in a checklist than it is this is good, bad. It's like,
okay, so
it does the thing.
So we may agree then. Okay, so let me put it like this, right? Do you agree that like the framework of depth is good, themes are good, let's even say something like consistent writing is good, right? These things are subjective. However, a story can be good in that framework, right? And a story can be better or worse within that framework. However, that framework in and of itself is still a subjective construct.
Okay, here's the thing. The only reason I hesitate to agree with you is literally because, like I said before, art is made for humans by humans. So
Sure.
Whatever we just decide it's like with money. We all just kind of agree that it has value, but it's imaginary,
But it doesn't.
right?
But we know that it doesn't objectively have value, right?
Yeah,
It's
but
a,
we still
it's a common.
treat it as that. We still live it as that. And at the end of the day, like this is I'll admit, ironically, my subjective take. If you consume art in a particular way, you kind of go into it assuming that you're going to have 3 reactions: positive, negative, or apathy. And that's it. Like any kind of additional nuance is just whatever. It's a variation of one of those 3 on the spectrum.
Sure.
But
I think you can get. I think that you can break it down a little bit more than that. But I do see, like, as a general rule, sure, those are like the 3 things you follow.
Yeah. So it still doesn't change that like a different human wrote it for you, and it's like not for you literally.
That assumes. Okay, so here's my problem with the argument, right? That assumes purpose. Like, okay, so like let's say the framework you're arguing from is, if this story fulfills its purpose, it's objectively good, right? Well, then the art would still be inherently subjective because we cannot know the author's framework or what their intentions are, because most authors don't say it, right? There are many stories that you could argue are not meant to be like stereotypically enjoyed. A lot of stories are meant to be unescapist. I don't know if that's a word or whatever. Anti-escapist.
I'll put it to you, whatever example you're going to give me, the relationship between artist and consumer, viewer, whatever you want to call it, is so like fundamental to art as a human construct. Because take the most like subversive, like anti-art piece of art, right? Like, you're not meant to know the story, it has no structure, it's just noise, static, whatever. Even with context, it doesn't make the art any more fulfilling. Like, it just, like, somebody literally found a torn up painting or something in the trash can, ascribed no meaning to it. They purely did it to do it. Like they have zero thoughts about, like, I'm trying to be as puritanical as I can be right now. They just they like total monkey brain. They put it on a wall. They're like art, right? Whatever. It's still, there's still a hint of intention in that whatever you decide to put out into the world as a creator is going to be consumed by other humans who then have their reactions to it, and then it'll retroactively make it art. Because
Sure. But,
like,
okay.
but
So
like,
I agree, but I'm saying what I'm arguing is the intention is like the intention doesn't matter when evaluating art. Right? I don't think like what they think that okay, so this is I don't want to go into a side tangent on that. Actually, I'll state my opinion on it, and then I can go back to like the objectivity thing. I don't think authors like intention with making a story matters at all with the interpretation of that story. It can, if you're now, I will say this, if you're attempting to analyze intentions, right? Yes, it can help. However, if you were just trying to analyze the depth, quote unquote, the themes, whatever, the author's intention is completely irrelevant, and you can throw that out as useless information if you want, without anything changing, right? Because, like, for example, right, let's take a look at, like, Gege Akutame, right? I want to try to pull up the interview. Maybe I'll send it to you after I can find it. But basically, he just straight up said he doesn't like intentionally write themes for the series. Like, they just happen, right? If people notice them, that's because they're noticing them, not because he writes them in. Does that mean they don't exist? Well, no, right? So his intentions, the quality of him trying to make a theme or not is completely irrelevant, because I, as a viewer, can interpret them to be there.
but
right?
doesn't that prove my point about art being kind of an agnostic, like, nebulous concept that kind of transcends our, like, another siren, sorry.
You're good.
Bro, I'm serious. I live right next to a highway, so all the ambulances and police cars, they just have to take this road. It's not even really a highway. It's just like one of those really, really big, like, two-way roads, like 4 lanes. Anyway, so the point I was trying to make is that at some point, art leaves the hands of the creator's intent and just becomes part of the overall, like, concept of what we call art, right? Like paintings, drawings, videos, whatever. They enter, like, this realm where people can sit down, consume it, analyzing it, do whatever they want with it, right? But if it's made by a person, like by a human being, what it does is that despite it, being transcendent into this, like, thing we call art, at the end of the day, art is still a human construct. Like, if you were to take an alien and have them, like, try to absorb all of the art that, like, humans made, their reactions would be, like, unthinkable to us, because whatever we think their reactions are still limited by, like, our human understanding, right? But like, as far as we know, there's no other life in the universe besides, like, animals and shit. But, like, obviously, like, like, we're not gonna go down that rabbit hole. But with that in mind, under these conditions, we have to assume that factually, the art that we have come up with is a fact. Like, it's just a matter of being. It's
a fact that it exists, right? And I don't disagree.
It's a fact that it exists.
Why is it a fact that it's good or bad? Like, why is
that? Because we as a collective can decide if it exists. We can also decide if it's good or bad based off.
No. We're not deciding. We're not deciding that it exists. We're observing that it exists. That's a very important distinction, right?
But
because observing something that exists is not the same thing as ascribing. Like, you can ascribe value to something, right? However, that like you doing that is inherently subjective, because you can personally ascribe this has meaning because I say it has meaning, right?
Yes.
Because the heart of the issue is this, right? It's and I'm not saying, like, you're avoiding the point or whatever. I'm saying it's because it's impossible. You have not and cannot give an objective, observable by by the 7+ billion people in the population reason that this art is good because of that depth. Because if I just say I'm ascribing that depth doesn't matter and is in fact negative towards making a good story, they have equal validity, right?
I guess.
And that's why I say it's subjective, because both of these things are now, obviously, you can I don't think that personally, but you could think that, and it would be equally valid because you have no objective framework to work from.
I guess, but like when I say something is objectively good or bad, right? I always like to I only ever say that if I have a subjective opinion that I'm going to say right afterwards, right? But to me it's like saying, ah, yes. Like I'll just give you my subjective interpretation just to kind of like circle it back around.
Mhm.
In like something that I see is like thoroughly well written. It connects the rest of the themes to the larger narrative. It pays off character development, and everything means something. Like a fight is important. Like it happens for reasons X, Y, and Z. And for example, the My Hero Academia chapter. Part of the reason I said it was like objectively better was because the attack that hit Shigaraki was aimed at his quirks, and just to keep it simple, but like quirks are like such a huge part of the My Hero Academia narrative. They're a huge part of the villain's powers, and they're a huge part of the societal problems in My Hero Academia, right? So for an attack to hit the main villain's quirks is like it adds a layer of like it adds many layers to that attack. It doesn't just make it like a cool thing that happened to me at least, right? However,
Sure.
the part of me that's like I enjoyed this or that, I'm like, oh, that was cool. And that's basically where it ends. But like
Mhm.
the level of enjoyment I feel is I don't know if you get like this, but like I can separate my personal feelings towards a piece of art and try to like understand
So
its like
I
intent.
kind of
Do you,
I kind of used to get that.
yeah.
So I get what you mean. I conceptualize. I just don't. I used to agree with that take. I don't anymore. For me, here's the way I look at it. Right, and it almost. I've had people tell me it comes off very like pretentious. I don't really care personally. I just want to clarify. I don't mean it in like a
Bro,
I'm holier than thou type thing.
no,
But here's the thing.
no, I just
If
don't
I
think
enjoy it,
I just don't think
if I
I'm
enjoy it, it is good. Right.
yeah.
And even if I don't enjoy it, it can be good
I guess like
for a reason that I personally ascribe to it, right? Here's the thing, and I'm saying like not I for me, if I enjoy the series, it's not I enjoy it, but it's bad, like objectively or whatever. For me, if I enjoy it, it is good.
mm-hmm,
End of story, right? I
yeah.
might not even be able to tell you the reason why it's good, right? Like for example, Tokyo Ghoul is a story I really love, and I know in my heart it's a 10 out of 10, right? Just great,
Mm-hmm.
fire. But if you were to ask me like what are the thematic depth and whatever, I don't know. I'd have to reread the series, right? I just know it's good because I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed it to a degree more than most other stories.
Okay,
Therefore,
but
it's good.
if I was to say something like, "Hey man, I read Tokyo Ghoul and I think it's a 6 out of 10 because of X, Y, and Z," I don't think that I mean, you could just shut your ears and say la 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 and just ignore me, right?
Sure.
But I don't think you'd believe that that was like an like you wouldn't not see the merit
I
in
would see the merit. I would see the merit under your framework. If our frameworks align, then we can have a discussion. But the
yes.
problem is
So
sometimes we
so the thing is that I'm trying to say is like
have to align
objectivity.
our frame. Like so, for
Yeah.
example, if you value character development, and I think a character not developing is fine, then we can't have a discussion, or at least not have a productive one.
Yeah, like for example, fuck. I hate that I have Bleach on my mind. Okay, I'm gonna try to
So
keep.
let's relate it to Hunter x Hunter. We can
Okay,
use that. That's common ground
so
for us.
for example, I really hate this one character named Pokel, and it's like
Okay.
become a bit of a running gag on my channel every time I do Hunter x Hunter videos. But like in my most recent one, I literally hate him so much that I forgot it was a power scale tier list and not a character tier list. So I ended up putting him in like F tier, despite him being able to use Nen, right?
Mhm.
So like it took chat reminding me of what I was doing to be like, oh shit, fuck, I'm my bad. I gotta bump him back up there. So my reactions toward this character are very subjective, but when I was trying to be objective about where to like rank his power on again and admittedly subjective video idea because I'm just power scaling based off my own interpretations and shit that I'm
Yeah,
reading, right?
exactly. Mhm.
There's still a part of me that like yikes. So there's still a part of me that's like fine, I guess this is technically more true and
Mhm.
within the wider context of the list, it reads as true. Like for example, I cannot put him on the same tier as like Meruem or Adult Gon. I just can't because that's not true, right?
Yep. True.
Despite them being fictional, like
Mhm.
that's objective and subjective. So it's when you get to
Well,
shit
yeah.
like that, it's like it's
Exactly.
very there is a degree of, yes, there is some level of objectivity in art, but it's just not something people like even recognize that they're doing.
So I think the objectivity of art is on a similar level to the objectivity of numbers, right? So it stops and ends relatively early, right? So the art exists, the numbers exist, right?
Mhm.
Almost every other interpretation is completely subjective. So like for example, right? My favorite number is 13, right? 13 is not objectively the best number, right?
Mhm.
We know that. However, we know numbers as a concept are objective. Art, right, or more specifically, like physically manga and anime, right, are objective things that we can observe, we can hold, we can grasp. Those are like physical, tangible concepts or physical, tangible things, right? And
Mhm.
we can kind of objectively measure them, right? However, we cannot objectively rate them, right? We know, like we already agree, numbers are objective. However, 13 is not like by this like universal truth that can be observed the best number. It's the best number because I decided it's the best number to me, right? Obviously. And that's why I stand with art. Art is good or bad because you have a framework and you compare every piece of art you come with or you consume with that framework.
But
That
it's a
framework comes from you and that's a subjective
hold on. But
framework.
there is a common framework at play. Otherwise, we wouldn't have shit like for example, anybody that watches Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, they'll rate it like an 8, 9, or 10, like almost always without fail.
Commonality doesn't mean objectivity though. They're like, okay, let me put it
I
like this.
no, I understand, but
A
I'm
lot
saying,
of people
but
are
I'm
racist. Like I don't
wait,
think that
hold
makes
on,
like that an objective right thing.
hold on,
But
siren. See, that one sounded like a fire truck.
so what I'm arguing is
Yes,
are you good
sorry.
now?
Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay.
I don't know
What
why
I'm arguing
I don't know why I'm apologizing.
you're good. It's not like it's like you said, it's not your fault. But
Yeah.
so you mentioned commonality, right? There's a commonality between it. And I agree. There's a common like for a lot of people there's a common ground in which they draw the line in the sand like this is good, this is bad. That's fine. However, that doesn't mean it's objective. That just means it's a shared subjective experience, right? Like
Yes, but it's like I have to get back to it. It's like for humans by humans, and it's like it, not realizing that the limitation is us as a species creating it is kind of my problem, because if the commonality is there, it more or less adds a sense of subjective objectivity, which I know sounds like an oxymoron, but if we make it right and we like most of us decide something is good consistently, we have to assume that there is at some like point in like the overwhelming majority saying who have consumed it saying, oh yeah, I like this for this reason, or and like it's this, and like you see a lot of the same reasons repeating. You have to say, oh yeah, like their framework is objective in that if I give them this series, they might all vote the same way, for example, right? It doesn't
the thing
change
is that's
it.
almost that
Like, and
that
if
that argument it becomes very flimsy when you look at the fact that there are consensus for a lot of things. That doesn't make all those like wait, so for example, right? There are bigoted people, millions of bigoted people that can come to a consensus, right, of bigoted ideologies, right?
uh,
However, that does not make that ideology in any way an objectively true or an objectively good one, right? That's their own framework in which they either ignore or sidestep evidence, blah blah blah, whatever, right?
mhm.
Their framework is not any more valid just because a lot of people like that framework,
Bro,
right? Their
listen,
framework is no more valid, it's no more true, it's no more right in an objective sense just because one, a million, 10 million, 100 million, like the number of people who
Ron,
believe it.
listen, man. Please don't make me take the pro racism side.
No, don't
I'm
please.
not. The thing I'm trying to say is like that's kind of a fallacy because you're comparing something like art to something like racism.
But they're both constructs that aren't tangible, physical, and I'm
No,
using it
because
because
like
your argument is it is objective to some extent because a lot of people believe it. My argument is, well, what about these things that a lot of people believe that we would both agree aren't objective? I'm using that to refute your points. Like I'm basically saying like if you're saying right, you're saying A equals B, right? And I'm like, okay, well, what about this example of A equaling B? And it's just some absurd thing. You're like, well, okay, not that one, but this one. Well, why is it specifically this one, but not all these other examples that I can list off the top of my head?
I'm
And
really
that's why I say there's no frame. That's what I'm saying. Like it's not that like so I think Doofy made honestly a pretty good like term for it. I don't know if he made it, but it's one I heard from him, right? He's like it's this collective subjectivity, meaning it's still subjective. There's no objectivity to it. There's no observable outside of our own brain, whatever, blah blah blah.
Mm.
But a lot of people agree on it. Therefore, we implicitly operate under this framework, right? Deeper themes equals better, more enjoyable and like equals most of the time better or whatever, or like better thematic relevance or more consistency, right? No plot holes, even though there's no objective reason to not like to have plot holes being worse. There's
almost
a humanity spread idea that it is the case, so we operate like it is. That doesn't make it actually objective though.
But it doesn't.
It just makes it a subjective idea that we all follow.
So to dial it back a little bit, what I think we're both working under different. You're coming at it from a purely theoretic standpoint. I'm coming at it from the net result is still like people rating Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood at 8, 9, or 10, right? Like I don't have Full Metal at an 8, 9, or 10, right? Even under the frame, I think it's fine. It's a cool show. I don't think Hunter x Hunter. I think Hunter x Hunter is surpassed by plenty of series. I think Naruto bullies Hunter x Hunter, and like even under those frameworks, right? That's what I'm saying. Like you can say that's the case, and you can say even though I follow like I would say a general framework of ideas. I think Ichigo is a much better protagonist than Gon. I think Naruto is. I think Yuji is. I think Deku is. I think a lot of characters are, and that doesn't. I don't think that means like I'm objectively wrong. But the thing is, like, I'm pretty sure you like them over each other for this same fundamental reasons. You could say I think they have more depth. I think they have better character development. Whatever, right? But if you were to take the reasons I like the characters that you don't like, and vice versa, the reasons would pretty much be the same. Doesn't that make those reasons the objective thing?
No, it doesn't. Because if I say I like Yuji because he has pink hair, that's just as valid as you saying you like Gon more because he has green hair, or you like Gon more. If you say, right, if I say Yuji is the better character because he has pink hair, right, or his last name is Itadori, right, you can say that's dumb, and most people would argue that's dumb, and that's fine, right? You don't have to agree with that framework. However, there is no reason that this is any less valid, right? If I say Yuji is the let me tweet that out because I don't know why I found that funny. Yuji greater than every other shonen, whatever. I'll tweet that out later because I'm kind of thinking. Anyways, whatever, right? If I say Yuji is better than Gon because he has pink hair, and you say but Gon's thematic depth is better, and I say that's cool, but Gon doesn't have pink hair, right? You would have to demonstrate why your reason is more valid. It's more valid to a vast majority of people, but we've already covered that. Appealing to the majority is not only fallacious, but it doesn't work when you use other examples, right? So if your only argument is, well, a lot of people think it, well, I've already covered that, right? And then it just comes down to, well, I think my reason is more valid, I think my reason is more valid, and we just have to agree to disagree because our frameworks are so far away from each other that it's impossible to reconcile them.
Bro, you're gonna like wet yourself over how amazing this transition is. So with that in mind, I want to go to the next segment of this podcast, which is where we talk about like Twitter beefs for the week. And specifically, there's this interaction that you and I had that I want to talk about. And it pretty much covers this topic where I was complaining that the sheer number of... I'll just read it out loud. So I tweeted this thing that says, the Fullbring is the worst canon arc in all of Shonen, hands down. Same tier as filler bound to arc IMO. Sorry, I have a burp. Okay. My favorite thing about this, so then I kind of quote tweeted that a couple hours later after I got like a bunch of reactions and ratioed by a certain purple-haired someone that shall remain nameless. And I said, my favorite thing about this tweet is the sheer number of negative reactions to my exaggeration of what is, by all accounts, a mediocre arc, in my opinion. It just bothers me because if I said this shit about Soul Society, everyone would just dismiss it as me being a hater and there'd be no conversation. And then I go on and I say, but the fact that so many people try to convince me or flame me for it tells me that you know in your heart it's not a good arc. I was bitter. I'm not saying there aren't cool moments or that it's even unimportant. I just think it's boring. That's really it. And if you couldn't tell from like the language I used, I was being very blunt about the level of subjectivity that went into me like making that went into the motivation of me making this tweet in the first place, right?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously you had different opinions and you took it upon yourself to ratio me.
Yes, of course, of course. Had to make sure to defend the arc. Can't let you just slander.
I know, but I don't. Let me send you. I don't know if I sent you the link. Oh, I did. Take a look at some of the other quote tweets. Right, like there's this one guy. He said, "This is what fatherless behavior does to someone." ... Gas up Fullbrink arc, and he just added like 4 panels from the manga. It's Ichigo crying, saying something about his dad. Ginjo like powering up into his form, and then the relevant characters. I'm just gonna call them what they are. The relevant characters coming out and like giving him the ratio or whatever. So it really bugged me because I understood what he was trying to imply with this quote tweet, because it was like, see, there's all this depth to it. And I at least can honestly look at that and be like, yeah, I can see why you think there's depth to it. But to me, I look at it from a different, like, holistic angle, and I'm like, all this depth that you're like pitching to me as like a bar for like subjective or for objective like quality reads to me like insecurity about the fact that like this, like the first half of this arc is just a repeat of Shinigami Substitute. Don't do it, Ronan. Just let me make my point. We're just trying to argue the philosophy. We're trying to argue the philosophy. We're not trying to argue the arcs. Anyway, so with that in mind, right? I can look at that and I can understand the like supposedly objective argument being made, but I can look at it, circle back my own personal experience with it and say, no, I just don't like it, right? Like despite me like comprehending.
But I don't think there's an objective argument for the Fullbring arc being good, because I don't think there's an objective argument for anything being good or bad. I think, well, let me put it like this. I'm right. Right? My opinion, like, this sounds so egotistical, especially if it's taken out of context, but, like, here's the thing. When it comes to anime takes, right, or manga takes, I'm correct, right? But that correctness only extends to myself and people who literally would have the same opinion. So nobody, just myself, right? You were correct. At least, let me put it like this. You are not correct in some of your interpretations of Bleach, I will say. Not interpretations. I'll say you're sometimes incorrect in, like, the information of, like, something will be like, Ichigo, I want Ichigo to kill someone, or that happened, right?
I love that.
But outside of that, right, with your conclusions that you draw, whether this is good or bad, you are correct under your framework, and that's fine, right? These two things can be true, and that more lends to the point of subjectivity, right? I think the reason I responded in the way that I did is I feel like I get it. Because it happens all the time. People are like, whatever, blah, 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 and it gets annoying. But the reason I'm somewhat sympathetic is because like relating to Hunter x Hunter, if you've ever responded seriously to someone saying the Chimera Ant arc sucks, you've fallen into that camp of like, and somebody could say, oh, you're just, you know in your heart the Chimera Ant sucks. Like, I don't think that's the case. I think you just defend a series that you really love, right? It just kind of, you feel territorial over it in general.
Yeah, and I will admit, like, that's just kind of my flaws, like, in being a person, is just like this is where we get into the subjective, like purely subjective territory, right? Where, for example, somebody can say the Chimera Ant thing, and if I ever decide that it's not like obvious bait, because like, dude, motherfuckers on Twitter fucking kill for clout, just any semblance of it, and so they'll tweet some shit like, I don't know, Dragon Ball is better than like, the Bible.
Dragon Ball is better than Hunter x Hunter, though. Like, let's talk about it. But that's not bait. That's serious. That's a serious opinion. But anyways,
so for me, my initial like knee-jerk reaction is they don't understand the manga, right? Like that is like the most admittedly the most arrogant thing that you can do as like a person who loves art, but it's always their knee-jerk reaction. They just don't like it. Sorry?
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to be honest.
They don't like it because they don't understand it.
A lot of people don't understand, at least. Now, here's the thing. If you want to get really, like, kind of, like, meta with it, right? You can say people don't understand it with the implicit, like, with, like, the understood under my framework. They don't understand it the way I do, which can be true, right? I think if you think JJK is bad, you don't understand the manga, right? But once again, that's not to say you're dumb. right? Let's not say, oh, you're a big stinky idiot, right, or
Yeah,
whatever,
it's more
because
like,
you don't get it.
yeah,
It's more like my framework dictates that it's good, and like you don't understand it under
see
that, which is not to say you're dumb, but it's just like
see
literally
I
you
would
don't get it the way I do.
I would phrase it more like you just don't understand it in the like you don't understand why it's good. More
Exactly.
yeah. So, I guess you're right. There is like more subjectivity than objectivity. I just don't think that things that like how do I commonality should not be dismissed. So like taking this into the real world, right? You can get as theoretical as you want with this conversation, right? But it doesn't change that if tomorrow I decide to make like a shonen series, right? Like almost like one for one story beat, super special fucking MC who has like an inner demon who's like in this world. I'll even pick one out of a fucking hat, dude. I want to say, fucking 1920s America, right? Like
Sure.
Roaring 20s, right? That's already like a world building that I barely need to do. All I would need to do is just add like a mystical element or some shit to it, and I'd be done. Hashtag, shout out Demon Slayer. But
Oh my god, bro.
but literally, it's so annoying because I can then choose to make it as dense with like themes, symbolism, etc., as I want to, and as long as I add just enough comedy or whatever to it, I guarantee you there like people will enjoy it because that's just the thing that they like, right? And like
Sure.
it doesn't change that the net result will just be that. So when you step out of the realm of theoretical, right, and you look at the like results of it and people like it for these reasons, and I was approaching it from a very clinical way, like I am trying to make something that I know will work. It's a strange sensation because there is an air of objectivity to it. And I even have a better example because like we both make videos on YouTube. Can you tell before you even like put pen to paper that a video idea is gonna blow up? Like can you just feel it sometimes? You're just like, yeah.
Sometimes, yeah, but sometimes it completely catches me off guard. So
Yes, but
kind of a mixed bag.
but those times that you're sure, like I'm just talking about
Mhm.
specifically those times. There's this feeling inside that like why, or you can kind of explain it using
Yeah, I
words.
mean, I could explain exactly
Yeah,
why I know certain videos will do well.
yeah.
But yeah,
But the point I'm trying to make is that like isn't that again, I want to step out of the realm of theoretical. Isn't that technically more objectively true as like a kind of thing that'll always work depending on like if any other YouTuber makes it? Like I'm trying to be general here.
well, okay, so no, I don't think so. I think that makes the video probably objectively, you could say popular maybe, but that doesn't make the video itself good, right? So like let me put it like let's see. Let me come up with an example. Like okay, so for example, the fall of Bleach, right? That video did well,
Are you talking
right?
about
It got
Super Eye Patch Wolves?
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a bad video that has misinformation in it, right? Or
Wait,
whatever.
wait.
Not like
Didn't you see his like
what?
4 years later one?
That's fine, but I'm talking about like the initial one,
Oh,
right?
I'm getting deja vu
Like
here now.
yeah, like the initial one, whatever, right? I think that is a video full of misinformation, right? And I think that video was bad,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it was popular, right? 1.2 million views. I don't think that that has any. Even if it had one view or if it had a billion views, I would still say that's a bad video. I
Yeah.
would say that video did
Yes.
well
The
from the
reason
perspective of getting clouts, but I
the
don't think
yeah,
that makes it good or bad.
but the reason I'm saying we have to step out of the realm of theoretical is because it's not like the people consuming it are okay, how do I put this? What do you ascribe as the value in making art for the creator?
Because you enjoy it.
But isn't that
That's the only
subjective?
reason.
Like
Yeah,
like
and
what
that's the thing. That's fine. If somebody else's value is impacting someone else's life, that's fine.
right,
That's valid. If someone is just they wanna feel superior, sure. I mean I
right,
don't
yeah.
agree with it, but whatever. Do your
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, but it doesn't the net result is still that you create something, right? That's the point I'm trying to get at is that no matter what approach you take to interpreting art, the net result will always be does this thing like like what effect does it have? Because
But that depends.
I hate.
That
Okay,
depends on a person to person basis, though.
okay. I'll put it to you this way. Let's say there's a piece of art that comes out, the greatest thing to ever come out, right? It just unites all of humanity. Like all of our class, racial, gender divides just all evaporate because of this thing being made,
Sure.
right? So with that being said, if nobody consumes it, it doesn't have that effect.
Sure.
So,
But that doesn't diminish any of its quality. So, like, let me put it like this, right? If you were the only one to read Hunter x Hunter, would it be any worse than if it was now?
no.
To you? No, right? However, all of its all of its value is gone, right? All of its value to people besides you is gone, right?
Mm-hmm.
So your own argument doesn't work even to you, right? Like even when we covered like this moral quandary of like, oh, if you create art and nobody sees it, does it even matter? Like, sure, you can get into that. That doesn't make it objectively good or bad, right? Because I feel like if I was the only one to read Jujutsu Kaisen, I'd want other people to know about it. But let's say I'm unable to for some odd reason, right? That does not diminish the story at all. That does not make it any worse or any better. That's just simply a state of being of its popularity.
I guess, but isn't popularity really like one of those things that, like, if there's no fan base for it, it doesn't have a point to being made, in my opinion. Like, I know I just said in my opinion.
I don't think that's true though. If you make something because you enjoy making it, then you fulfilled your purpose.
Yeah.
Now, if you make something, now I'll say this: if you make something with the intention, like your goal is to make something popular for the sake of it being popular, and it fails, you failed at your goal. But your goal was subjective anyway. It's not objectively a good goal. It's just a goal you had, and you ascribed value.
Yeah, so the point I'm trying to make is just that there's no... Okay, what does getting into this theoretical, like, diatribe... Like, what are you trying to, like, get out of it, if you know what I mean? Like having... Like, just to get really meta, having this debate with me for, like, the last half hour, or however long we've been having... we've been on this topic. Having this... Like, what is the result that you're looking for?
What is the result I'm looking for?
Yeah,
like, an intellectual discussion.
Right.
A discussion that involves both parties and that I can glean information from and that you can glean information from.
So would you say that that's been a success?
No, I mean, it's not completed yet, but I would say we're in the process of that. We're at least moving in the direction of
like what you consider a success,
where
right?
I want it to go.
Right? So like,
yeah, sure.
With that being said, doesn't that mean that once it's over, it's over? Like there's no... It's fulfilled its purpose, and at that point, both of us can kind of forget about it. I'm not saying this literally, but like both of us can... Yeah, both of us can just like forget about it, say, oh yeah, okay, that was fun, and then we just, carry on.
I mean, you can, yeah.
Yeah, so with that in mind, why is it that when I try to say there is probably, like, theoretically, you're probably right, there is no, like, objective subjective thing, right? But it based off of the same principle we use to ascribe value to money, we ascribe certain features of art to, like, almost merit calling it objective, where we say, oh yeah, we want characters to have depth, we want to, I don't know, laugh, we want X, Y, and Z, and then the net takeaway is like you enjoy a thing, right, for however many reasons you have. Does it, like, what, like...
Are you asking, like, what's... Like, how is it functionally different from being objective? Because it's almost similar?
Yes, thank you.
Sure. So I'll answer that. There's two different ways you can answer that, and I kind of fall into both camps. So the one is people, like, very smart people, have moral quandaries and, like, questions that literally don't impact their life, like, all the time. Like nihilism, right? If it doesn't matter, the idea that adopting a nihilistic philosophy is idiotic in and of itself, right? You're clearly doing that because you find, whether that be some objective meaning in the universe or some meaning that you derive yourself, right? There's some reason, intrinsic reason, you could say it's maybe even biological, that you want to have this discussion, right? Sure, cool, right? But if you're like a nihilist, any discussion, doing anything, even like literally doing anything is just pointless, right? There's no meaning, blah blah blah. So but those discussions are still had, right? they still keep moving forward and they still keep, whatever, doing their daily routines, right? Even though there is no inherent meaning, right? I think that for one, there's that, right? People just like to ponder and discuss concepts, or nebulous concepts sometimes. So I
Mm-hmm.
don't think there has to be any value outside of just discussing it. But even so, if you were looking for that, I do think I have some. I would say that the value from this conversation is one, people value having people that agree with them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I were able to convert you to my opinion, that would be some sort of like a dopamine hit of, yeah, now I have someone else who agrees with me. Now
Mm-hmm.
my argument to me has more merit, right? But objectively, that's not the case, right? My argument has no more merit or less if I convince you or if I don't, right? It's just to me, right? I think if I can, take somebody who disagreed with me fundamentally and then, through discussion, debate, argumentation, whatever you want to call it, get them to agree with me, right? That's cool. What the fundamental reason is, I don't know. I don't know, like, why I think it's the case, but I just know I think it to be true.
Right, but that doesn't really extend to the larger conversation about other art. Whether it's TV shows, mangas, comic books, whatever. Those motivations, like for just doing anything, doing something, all change, but it doesn't change that the fact that it all, like, whatever the reasons are, it always results in a thing and a reaction to that thing. And can you say that, like, that pipeline of motivation, creation, reaction is objective? Because that's what
The fact
happens.
that no, 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 yeah, the fact that it happens is what
Yes.
what quality is ascribed to it is not, and I think I've always agreed with that. The act that anime and manga exists, the act of it being created, the act of it being consumed, all I agree objectively exists. The quality derived from it, I think, is holistically subjective.
To what end?
I mean, to what end?
Like, to like what? See, this might be a subjective. Like, fuck it, I'm just gonna call this my, like, subjective desire for this from this conversation.
Okay.
What, like, to what end does knowing that let's assume you're 100% right, like, there is no such thing as objectively good or bad art, right?
Okay.
Now what?
Nothing. I convince you that I'm correct, and then I
Yes,
move on.
right, but that means you fulfilled, like, your purpose or your desire to do a thing, and it makes you feel, like, happy, sad, whatever.
Sure.
But would you say that that's then objectively good for you?
No.
Why not?
Because it's possible that if you disagreed with me, this could have led to a better discussion that impacted my life further down the line. There's literally an infinite amount of possibilities that you agreeing or disagreeing with me can branch off to, right? I can't predict that. All I know is now I want you to agree, or not necessarily I want you to agree, but now I want to have this discussion and, make you agree to agree, but make you want to agree, make you, like, genuinely change your mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
However, that doesn't mean it's objectively good, right? Because there's an infinite amount of. I'm not U-Haul, right? I'm not, like, able to see all these possibilities or whatever. There was one that I chose out of all of the ones that I perceived or whatever. I chose one. I like it the most, and I went with it. That doesn't mean it's objectively the good thing for me. That doesn't mean it's objectively good or bad for you. It's just the case that I want it to be there, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I go for it with what I have. You could say this discussion objectively happened. What the quality or the purpose of it was is kind of like it falls a lot on the individual.
I guess, but I'm having a hard time conceptualizing the external value to it beyond what it does for you and I.
Hmm.
Because maybe somebody's like, "Wow, this is an amazing." Damn, I'm sorry, dude.
Good.
I keep burping throughout this whole thing, like, on, like, poignant statements that I'm about to make. But somebody can be, like, watching or recording this back, and they'll be like, "Wow, this was an amazing discussion. It really made me think about this in an entire new light." And then the next day, they'll read a chapter of, like, Naruto or Boruto, and they'll be like, "Wow, this is good." And then they'll still be wrong, right? Because Naruto is objectively not, like, good. Sorry, I had to do it. I saw an opportunity. I had to do it. Um,
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
but, like, aside from like the later end of that statement, they could still read a chapter of Boruto tomorrow and be like, yeah, this is good, I like this, it's an objectively good like written chapter. Or hell, they could even say it's a subjectively good chapter, right? Just say them saying either thing has the same net result as them saying nothing, in my opinion. Because if they were like,
So what if it does? So what?
What do you mean, like in
So I'm
what?
saying, so what? So what if it has zero impact on them whatsoever?
The point that I'm trying to make is that it still fulfills that, it still obeys that general pipeline of, remember when I said there are 3 reactions to any piece of art: good, bad, neutral, and like everything in between is like just a variation on that spectrum.
Sure.
So if they have like no reaction, falls under neutral. If they have a positive, falls under good, etc. So by that logic, doesn't that mean that there is a sense of objectivity to the general process of consuming art?
There's an objectivity. Okay. So what are you saying, that it's objective that you will react?
Yes.
Sure. But that's
Yeah.
not the
Yeah.
root of the issue here. I feel like what's
But
happening is you're arguing around my point. I'm not arguing that like art doesn't objectively exist or something like that. What I'm arguing is strictly the value or quality cannot be determined by objective means, no matter what you attempt to do for that, right? You can say, "Oh, it's impact." Okay, why? And if I ask you why infinitesimally until we get to the root, it's because you think so, right? There is
yes.
no framework that exists outside of your own personal mind or the minds of others, right? That can be observed to be the case all the time, right? Excuse me. That can be observed to be the case all the time, right? Making it subjective. And if it's subjective, right, then what you value is fine. It's completely correct to you, right? And that's fine. And if you want to have discussions based off of those values, you can still have discussions based off of those. Subjectivity doesn't make these discussions impossible. All it does is recontextualize them to make sure that you understand and other people around you understand that there is no set metric of this is good. And I also think that if you were to ask what the purpose of, if you were genuinely asking that, right, and you're like, okay, what is the purpose of this? If somebody listens to this and say they want to write a story and eventually, right, what this does is this broadens their ability to tell a unique story because they are not limited by conventional means of quality.
I know, but they also sorry. They also have to consider that those conventional means of quality work. So, like,
Yeah, they work for some people, but they don't work all across the board. I guarantee it.
Yeah, because
I
there's
100%
obviously there's obviously nuance and execution, but the point is I'm trying to make is like, you don't have
even
to
if
you don't have to
even if
do a
okay,
you don't have to do it, like if you're making a shonen, right? You don't have to do a trio of 2 boys, 1 girl, right? You don't
sure.
have to. But it's almost like shonen fans, the ones that you essentially like are at the mercy of in terms of like who reacts the most to your art, is like, depending, like, let's say you want it to be successful,
Once
right?
again,
You
that
do have
depends.
to,
That right there. I want to catch you right there, right?
right?
If you want to be successful, your subjective goal, right? If you want to be, and we're talking, I'm guessing you're talking about like popularity and monetarily, right?
Yes.
Is that safe to assume?
Yeah.
Okay, right. That's
But
that goal you determine for
but
yourself. That means
that was just an
nothing outside of your
example.
own
But
self.
that was just an example, like I picked out of a hat, like, because that's the
No, that's
most
fine. But what
that's
I'm
the most
saying is,
common one.
no, I agree. What I'm saying is that only matters like so like, oh, people see it or not. That only matters if that's your goal. If that's your goal, so then sure, you follow certain steps, right? But that doesn't make it objective. That means you understand how the world works subjectively and you move through that framework with that
But
understanding. You
if that's the
understand.
but if that's the way the world works, isn't that how the world works? Like, objectively?
Subjectivity works though. Like I don't think I think maybe we're you're like we're having a disconnect because subjectivity works. Like there are things people can generally agree on that they like, but that doesn't make it objective. Like I said, people
But
liking something,
there's
a
no,
large amount of
yeah,
people
okay,
liking something or disliking something does not make it the case inherently or objectively.
sure, but I guess you are right. I think the disconnect here is that, to me, I can't fathom like separating art from humanity, in that, like obviously there's so much subjectivity in like being a person, but at the same time, when somebody's like has these conventions of this is good, this is bad, and I feel like we're almost talking in circles here, but the point I'm trying to make is that if in the end, right, in the most like, I'll just try to keep this example super generic, but I want to make a popular thing. This is like stuff that's been proven to work. I'll add my own spin or whatever to it, and then it might take off, it might not. But what ends up happening is that for it to have that initial reaction, it needs to be seen by people, and then like from there, it'll like do what it does in whatever the art thought marketplace. However,
Sure.
the general point that I think I'm hung up on is that in that entire stretch of action and the most neutral, like unbiased, unadulterated execution of creating art, it's always going to be by a person. You know what I mean? By another human being, like just factually. So if that's the case, if we can ascribe the creation of art as objective, why can't we ascribe the reactions to its execution as objective?
So you're asking, because we can observe art exist, why can like the opinions on it not be objective?
Yes, because it's both things are human products.
But here's the problem. If you have contradicting things, both of them can't be objective. You can't say, okay, so let me put it like this, right? One cannot be two, right? It's impossible. It's objectively speaking, right?
Yes, but
incorrect.
like humans didn't.
So what I'm saying is,
but humans didn't create one.
We didn't create one. What we ascribed is one's name, what that means, right? We did ascribe almost everything to it, and we don't know if humans created, like, what the concept of what sharing something that we create that's created, is that like what you're saying, like we created or something?
Yeah. So, like for example, if humans were these super like literal beings of objectivity or subjectivity, whatever, they would just essentially be robots, or like how do I put this? There's no need for art that is like what would
inherent to us surviving.
Yeah.
We don't need art to live. We don't need art to live. Yes.
So it's an inherently subjective medium or
It's an
concept.
inherently unnecessary
Yes.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So it like what ascribing any kind of objectivity to it is a little, it seems a little like necessary because we deemed it like as something that we do, have to do, need to do, whichever one. So why is it that when it comes to all of that, we say, oh yeah, this is an objective thing that humans be doing, but when it comes to reactions to it, it's not like, oh yeah, this is like objectively good or objectively bad.
We agree that art does not need to exist. Our humanity is not necessitated on art existing, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can survive, and I don't know if you want to say thrive, but we can survive without it, right?
Mm-hmm.
However, we, like people, a lot of people at least, as a collective, kind of decide we want art to survive. It's integral to our being, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can agree that we think this should be the case, and we can even agree that art exists. So I'm going to give you an example, right? Let's say, I drink, right?
Mm-hmm.
And objectively speaking, beer exists.
Mm-hmm.
And I love beer, and I can't live without it, right?
Okay.
So far, what we have is the dichotomy of, or we have the comparison or the parallel of art existing, beer existing, right? Where you take it is art existing objectively inherently means that a quality of it has to objectively exist, right?
Yes.
With the beer analogy, what I'm saying is because beer exists and because I drink it does not objectively make it good for my body. Right? Just because it exists does not mean it objectively helps it, right? So that's what I'm saying. The existence of something does not necessitate its quality being real, right? Because
then
what we're discussing is for like quality. What we're discussing is like a metaphysical, intangible concept that cannot be grasped by humanity. It's impossible, right? Quality is not something you can hold, at least in the context of what we're talking about now.
But neither is art, really.
Art is. I can grab art right now. I can grab my manga full of art right now. And I can hold that. right? Now, if you're talking about art as like this nebulous humanitarian or like this humanities construct of it, sure, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then what art is becomes subjective too, right? If we're obviously art, right? What is art? Kind of becomes like, is a video art, whatever, blah blah blah, whatever. You can get into that discussion if you want, but that's a little bit of a side tangent, right?
Yeah.
I can hold art, and like I can. Here, let me grab my manga real quick. I can grab a volume of Jujutsu. I can grab Jujutsu Kaisen Volume 1 right now, right? Turn on my light, take a picture. Where's my phone at? And show it to exist, right? And show that I can hold art in my hands, right? However, what I cannot do is show, right, quality in my hands. I cannot show something that is objectively quality or objectively good in my hands because we cannot show it to be the case anything outside of the art existing, right? I don't know if that makes sense, but basically, right? Boom, right there. Objective proof, it exists to be the case. I can hold art in my hand physically, right? It's tangible. I can conceptualize it and then act upon that concept. With quality, it is purely this intangible, like, I don't know if metaphysical is the word. I don't want to just be throwing out words I don't know what they mean, but
Yeah.
I'm just for the sake of my argument, metaphysical type of thing that exists in this sort of plane above us. We can hold art in the same way that I can hold a beer, right?
Mm-hmm.
They both exist. Beer's almost honestly a bad example. Hold on, let me.
Yeah, but it's been I might cut this part out because we're gonna be stroking each other for a second, and it might kill the momentum of your point. But I've been having a blast for like a pilot.
Fun, man.
Yeah. Can't wait to do this next week for 6 hours when we argue about Bleach.
Yeah, that's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, man. I might
be very interesting.
Bro, I might need to make like a whole pot of coffee for that one.
Yeah, I'm gonna make sure I got my 5-hour energy drink. Got my energy ready. But yeah,
bro.
Basically,
need my electrolytes.
Back to the point real quick.
Yeah,
I want to say that like we can hold art, right? Now, if you want to say can we hold art as a concept, no, right? But that lends to the idea that these conceptual things really aren't rooted in objective nature. We can objectively observe them to exist within the universe, right? Or like within our world or on Earth or in our hands or whatever. But what they mean is it's intangible. It inherently, I think, is subjective because they don't exist outside of the framework of our own personal mind, right? Art even being something that is worth making is like I guess kind of like a subjective thing, if you want to say that, right? Like there's probably some people that think art is a waste of time, right? That it is not necessary, and to that extent, they could be valid in that opinion, right? Unless there's biological studies showing that art increases happiness, blah blah blah, right? Those are objective metrics, right? But if there's not, right, then there would be no objectivity on that matter, right? So that's why I'm saying you can say it is collectively subjective. You can say most people agree to this being the case, but I've already discussed majority does not, I won't even say it doesn't inherently, it does not even imply quality. It implies societal norms and standards, right? Because there are plenty of atrocious, disgusting things that humanity has agreed upon in the past because those were the societal norm.
Yeah.
Those were the agreed upon standards. And those standards fluctuate and change at the drop of a hat.
Yeah, but doesn't that mean in the context
So we know those aren't objective. We know these aren't rules to live by.
Doesn't that mean that in the context of their like practice that was considered objective and then retroactively changed?
No. Problem is, right? Let me put it like this. It can't be objective when we use like a number analogy. One has always been one. You can give it a different name. You can give it a different connotation. You can draw it differently. One is always one, always will be one, and always has been one, right? It can never, will never, and has never changed, right? If I put one rock in front of you, whatever value, if you want to say uno, if you want to say one, if you want to say any other, whatever, right? It still is one, right? And what I'm saying is, when we see that these other things, these more nebulous, intangible concepts fluctuate and change, that is an indication that they are not inherently objective or at all objective. They are these nebulous concepts that we personally, for whatever reason, maybe societal norms, whatever's going on, our economic status, the world, whatever, it's influence in creating what we like and therefore creates a subjective view for our time. This is why, like, old movies have a certain aesthetic, right? Or they have certain themes, or there are certain tropes, because within that niche demographic, or within that group of people, that is what they enjoy for specific reasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like shonen, battle shonen works so well because they're targeted towards like, like 15 to 18-year-olds, whatever, right? Or something like that. Some like a younger demographic of men, right?
Mm-hmm.
And battle shonen fulfill a male's power fantasy, whatever, right? If you want to say that. So the reason it kind of like battle shonen just kind of like is almost it's almost a revolving door of similar tropes and stuff like that is because it applies to a group of people that for whatever reason come to a consensus that this is good. But that doesn't mean it is good objectively outside of that framework, is basically what I'm trying to get at.
I think I mostly agree with you. If I just kind of ascribe a little bit more, oh God, this is gonna be such a bad thing to end on because it essentially proves your point. But I essentially ascribe more meaning to the general pipeline of art production and consumption, and that I just think I don't want to say there's an objective purpose, but with each person's purpose in creating and consuming art, there is a sense of semi-objective meaning in the entire process.
I don't think so. I think that, like, let me put it like this. Right?
No, like
there's plenty of forms of art
that was more like my final thoughts. Like that's where I landed.
Got you.
Yeah.
Got you.
Yeah.
Okay.
But like that was like a very fun discussion because you did make me think a lot about. By the way, I just want to clarify: I will not stop using objective and subjective just as words because it gets people like really irritated at me on Twitter, and for some reason that makes me happy. So I'm gonna keep doing that. But
gotcha.
Yeah, but like you did make me personally at least consider it in a different light. And I will say that.
Gotcha. I'm glad to hear that. Is that a good place to stop off or stop the episode?
Let's just do your closing thoughts because you forgot to say, "Oh, Kreams, man, you made me see it in a whole new light too. Wow, you're so amazing, dude. You're probably chiseled, bro. Thanks, man."
All right, my closing thoughts. I'm correct. I'm always correct. I've never been wrong. But for real, I will say that like obviously I've had this discussion with people before, but usually they're just like a little too either like brain dead or like bullheaded to even have the discussion past it's the case because it's the case, right? And they won't get into these types of arguments. So I will say this has definitely like been probably the best objective versus subjective argument I've ever had. I can't say I've been in too many, but I mean it was enjoyable. I like arguing. I like discussing these types of stuff anyways, so it was pretty fun.
And not only do I appreciate it, but I just want to take this moment to personally apologize to Doofy for having to sit to 2.5 hours of us.
Yeah, if he watches this part, that's gonna be funny because I feel like he's just gonna be sitting there just like he's like just grinding his teeth.
Bro, I
just waiting. Yeah.
I know, man, bro. One of two things is gonna happen if he ends up like watching it. He's gonna like just be taking notes to like make a response video. And I'll be honest, I'll watch that video 100 times, man. If anybody wants to like clip this podcast and like make a video responding to us, please do. Please.
I'm down.
Yeah. And just link it. Because Ronan and I are clout whores. We will do anything for clout. I do speak for both of us on all things.
Exactly, yeah.
Yes. The other thing that I expect to happen is him like appearing in like episode 3 or something or down the line and just him debating us like personally.
That'd be dope. I do like anime debates. Like those are really fun. Like getting into those types of stuff.
Dude, don't worry, man. I have so many anime debates and the best part is that like next week is gonna just be an episode where we debate one anime.
Yeah, it's literally. Let me tell you this, Bleach fans. I got us. We're gonna make it out of there. All right. I want to say that. Be excited for next episode. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah. We have to. Dude, I love that we recorded for 2.5 hours and we still don't have a name for this thing.
I have no idea. I like I said before we even recorded, I'm bad at naming things.
Bro, so am I. I don't even know how to title my own videos. You think I can title an entire series?
That's true. Titling videos is kind of difficult. I really just be kind of like coming up with it like a couple of hours before I actually put it up there because I'm just like that pressure. But Yeah, man, I did enjoy like talking about this, recording this, and all that stuff.
Hell yeah. I think this was a like fantastic pilot episode.
Yeah.
And I don't think either of us expected to go on for this long and to get like this into the weeds.
Yeah. Hold on. Are we officially wrapped up, or are we still gonna get conclusions there?
Like, comment, and subscribe. Yeah, we both have YouTube channels. Go watch our videos, please. Actually, you know what? No, you have to. You sat through 2.5 hours. You can sit through like 15 minutes.
Honestly, if you sat here for 2.5 hours, watch them. Like, just watch them.
Yeah, dude, and just subscribe. Okay, like
Yeah,
it's
just do both.
Yeah, and never look up the sunken cost fallacy.
Oh my god.
Anyway, like, comment, and subscribe. Bye.